to speak to the board during public comment if they are interested.
And they need to refresh their YouTube and then they'll see the Zoom link?
Correct. And
Okay.
the Zoom link is also on the agenda, so hopefully
Okay.
People will be able to see that.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much for dealing with our technological agenda.
Actually, Director Corbett, the YouTube link is just now working, so we are good.
Okay.
We are live.
So
thank you.
There's all your options, YouTube, Zoom, we're all good. So thank you so much. I just wanted to make a comment on the question that Director Waspy asked as well with regard to planning and regulations to protect folks from fire dangers. I just wanted to mention from my previous life that there have been many attempts over the years, even years ago, to insert some regulation with regard to land use planning from the state level to ensure when developments are moving forward that issues of fire safety are taken into consideration as to where to build and how to build and all those things that we all know about because we pay attention to these sorts of things. And it has been very, very difficult to create state laws that regulate in that way. There has been some progress made, and more recently there has as well, because unfortunately we've had to experience disasters to get that going. But I think that this would be an also really good issue for Director Waspy and the Legislative Committee, just take a look and survey the rules and the laws that are out there. And if we can be part of advocacy efforts to ensure that smart decisions are made, keep people safe, that would be not a bad thing to do. So now those are my 2 cents on that one. Thank you so much. So Sean, was there any other questions before we go to Sean? Okay, hello, Sean.
Thank you very much.
Sean, we need your voice.
Yeah, it's like the one thing that can go wrong, right? Thank you very much for having me. And Corbett, members of the board, I'm Sean Dugan. I'm the Trails Development Program Manager. Today, I'm going to introduce the department. I'm going to share my screen here. I may turn off my video just to make sure that everything goes smoothly as far as bandwidth goes. But I'm going to run through some projects and attempt to share my screen with you. Let's see. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So the Trails Development Department is 3 staff managing approximately $20 million in capital funds right now over various projects. I've chosen about 15 to highlight in this packet this year, but at any given point, there's probably about 30 projects ongoing, various things we're supporting or touching from here that will come up, from time to time that we're queuing to be ready in the future. The projects in the packet represent about 26 miles of trail, and with very preliminary estimates for some of them and more accurate estimates for others, about 100 million in trail gap closure projects. What you're seeing on the right here is, so this is a story map, and you may be familiar with it, but on the right, you'll see a larger map that can be zoomed around and things. And on the left, there'll be some pictures that will pop up. And so I will click through the various projects that I would like to highlight briefly as I can. But all of the projects are here in case there are questions from the packet. So, and all the numbers correspond to the numbers in the packet and the numbers on the map. And so with that, I will describe, unless there's any questions, I just want to ask real quick. It looks like maybe I heard someone.
Any questions? Go ahead.
Okay, great. So the master plan map here on the right is The blue lines are existing trails that have been constructed. They're regional trails. And the purple pink lines are proposed trails that have yet to be completed. Those pink lines are, in some cases, one project, and in many cases, in most cases, many projects in order to complete them. As you can see, they both connect our parks together, but this network also connects communities to our parks. It connects communities to transit, to employment centers, and to commercial centers. And they are forms, many of them, if not most of them, are forms of active transportation. This is the world that the Trails Department lives in. This is what we look at every day when we look at what we're going to do that day. Without belaboring that, I should mention too that not only are these proposed trails, but some of these trails are lines in the sand, so to speak, so that if there's anything out there being planned by other jurisdictions, cities, the counties, that this sort of gives us a presence in those areas. So if there's a development or something that could benefit the public for recreation or active transportation, this gives us a seat at the table. And a lot of these lines do just that. So with that, I'll introduce my staff real quick. That's me on the left. That's Suzanne Wilson. She's senior planner in my department in the middle. And that's Sean Connolly on the right. And we do complete paved trail projects, major capital projects like the Pinole Shores Bridge. But we also work very closely with operations, planning, design and construction, stewardship to design and construct trails within our parks as well. And so we wear two hats there. And I'm happy to answer any questions about our department if they come up. So I'll start with Lone Tree Point. This is the San Francisco Bay Trail connection. It's about a half a mile of paved trail, but when it's complete, it will open up about 4 continuous miles from Rodeo, the unincorporated community of Rodeo in Contra Costa County, all the way down to Wilson Point. Right now, final design and construction, right now construction is underway. And it's, as you can see, it involves a half-mile trail, a bridge over a wetland, and it also involves some staging area improvements in our staging area here. There will also be a spur trail in yellow, you can see going across the Avenue Bridge and over to our shoreline portion of that park. This has experienced some delay, COVID-19. But very minimal, because right now most of the work that we've been doing is trying to finalize the design of this bridge here in blue. It's a 200-foot bridge that will be lowered in by cranes in 2 pieces. I have been asked when that will happen. It looks like it's probably going to be around December of 2020 that we'll see that happen, but I will keep you all informed because it's quite impressive to watch. Right now, so this actually next week, we anticipate breaking ground, grading activities, site security, et cetera, finally. So we're underway and anticipating completion of this project in February of 2020. The total cost of this project is about $3.9 million, and it's fully funded. And I will say that 83% of this project is funded by outside grants. The other 17% is Measure WW and Measure AA. So another great job done by our grants department. We've received transportation money for this, and we've received cap and trade funding through the Urban Greening Grant Program, Measure J funds, and transportation for clean air funds, et cetera. So here you can see an inset of the staging area improvements. It'll include some parking lot improvements and a new gate. We'll go down to 1 gate and the trail will go through there. There'll be an ADA parking space installed and then a new restroom, which will be a flush restroom. We anticipate that to happen around December as well. And a quick picture of this is the property here on the right. That area, that depression in the middle there is where the bridge will go over, and it will travel through that property there. So I will move on to another project unless there are any questions on that. Okay, hearing none, I will move on to the Bay Area Ridge Trail. So this one is in design and the permitting phase. And for some reason, I must have lost my layers here. Hold on.
So Sean, sorry, this is Brian Holt. So I just got a message from Christy in our GIS department that I guess our great timing, our GIS server went down. So a lot of your GIS layers won't go on there. So I guess our options are you can continue to try to explain off of here, or I've talked to Lisa and Matt, and they can move forward on their side as well. So I'm not sure exactly what you want to do for your presentation.
I think we can continue. I have enough graphics.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
Let's try that.
And Christy and others are working to get that up as soon as possible.
Sean,
Great.
I wanted to make sure too that the board knows that in their packets, there's a pull-out map of the overview that you showed earlier that might also be helpful as you're showing particular projects where it's placed within the full park district. And it's on, it says page 20 on the bottom in your packets, everybody.
Thank you, Director Corbett. Yes, it is page 20. That will help orient you for sure. So thank you for that. Well, let's try this. The next project is it's the Bay Area Ridge Trail, and it stretches from Garin Dry Creek Regional Park and eventually to Vargas Plateau. It's about a 5-mile gap with roughly 2.5 miles of it are on existing roads, and there'll be about 2.5 miles of new construction. As you can see on the left, there's a black line. That's an emergency vehicle maintenance access road that is now in place. So we do have access up to our property to the north. The area on the right is going to be a new public access easement, trail constructed within that easement. This project was hard fought. This was a condemnation that resulted in a negotiation and a settlement to construct this trail on the green trail on the right. We had established it on the road. But the good news is that I think we have a better alignment because of that negotiation. Once this project is completed, while it's only 5 miles, it opens up 50 miles of continuous Bay Area Ridge Trail from Vallejo Mill Park in the south here in Fremont, all the way up to Kennedy Grove. So it's one that we've been fighting to complete here over the last several years. Right now, so this board adopted the CEQA document actually in November of 2018. We are with the Army Corps of Engineers, the Water Control, CDFW, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to get the permits for this. There are 7 creek crossings, and what's holding us up at this point is the Water Quality Control Board has asked that we provide full design of those crossings. Normally we field fit fords and harden the crossings. They are all existing at the moment, with the exception of one, which will be a bridge. And so we have our design and construction team working on these full design for these fords. And I'm afraid that this may be the new norm, but it takes a lot of effort to design these. We have to get surveyed, topo, and all the things that we would do for a major capital project in a backcountry trail. So we are working on that. A very historically significant area is across the Niles Canyon Railway, which is the original alignment of the Transcontinental Railroad. And then during the, we have also, there's a very high Native American activity here at the mill site itself. And we have discovered some remains and things there. So we are being very, very careful with this project. And right now we are working with the CPUC, the California Public Utilities Commission, to submit an application to cross that railroad. We'll bring that up here. I hope you can see that it's as big as I can get it. We've ran a visual analysis of this, and the good news is that the initial feedback from the CPUC on this is that we can construct a passive crossing here, which is without a signal. But we're working through the design. The Alameda County owns the railway itself, and once we get approval on the design from CPUC, we will obtain a license agreement from the and construct the crossing. Hopefully, if the crossing improvements are not too expensive right now, we have a budget of about $900,000, which we're spending currently. And we're hoping that we can cover the cost of that with that budget. View, and when things get tough, you know, we remember why we're doing it. This is a view looking east through Niles Canyon from the trail alignment that we're proposing. So next I'm going to move on to a project that
I see Director Lane.
Director Lane has a
Thank-
question.
I would be happy to answer that.
Hi, you know, I think this is such a significant project. I just wanted to weigh in and say that, and I'm anticipating what an extraordinary completion it will have. The other thing that I would like to make sure the board is folded in to discuss is the future of the Viejo Mills property. Because I know there's discussion about, you know, Fremont would like us to take it, and it has a lot of challenges, but it also is a very intriguing historical landmark with layers of interesting cultural history. So at some point, I'd like to make sure the board is folded into the discussions about the future of that property.
Director Waspy also has his hand up. GM, would you like to weigh in first? Please unmute yourself.
I will unmute myself. Sean, if you could bring your map back up, if you can. I just think it's really important for the whole board to realize that non-green property is a huge private ownership that we're going through, so that none of that's park. So those views are from our trail. This property recently changed hands, and we're trying to find out more about that directly. There's been no plans for it submitted, but this is going to be one that will be a challenge in the future. But our trail is locked in. But you can see that's a very high ridge line and very prominent. And so we really will have to pay attention to that in advanced planning. As Dennis noted, that's one of the big ones that will come in the future. I don't know when, but just the fact that this trail went to court, otherwise you wouldn't have a trail here because it went through this property. So I want to thank everybody for that, but just, I didn't want people to think of that trail as going through parkland. That's a lot, one very, very large property ownership, one of the largest remaining in Alameda County.
And is it in county land use jurisdiction?
It's a combination, I believe, of a little bits in Fremont, kind of the bottom end of the trail, and the rest is Union City. Some of it may also be in Alameda County, Sean. You probably know.
That will
All
make
three.
it more complex as well. Director Waspy and then Director Rosario have questions.
All right, yeah, thank you. And Sean, I think we all agree this is going to be a really, really key connection. And I'm wondering, I know everything keeps getting complicated. Can you, if you have the ability to, tell me what's going to go first? Are we going to try to get the CPUC to agree to a crossing and then build the crossing and then come up and try to build the recreational alignment, the 3.64 miles, or what order will it go in? And I guess the question I'm leaning to is if we could get that crossing, then am I correct in assuming that you could use could you use the EVMA alignment that's already there as a trail temporarily while we build the more attractive one, or scenic one, or whatever the word is, safe one?
Yeah, Director Waspy, thank you. It was very clear in the settlement that the public is not to access on that EVMA. That is solely for our purposes and emergency purposes, unfortunately. What comes first? We can build, as soon as we get the permits for the upland portion, we intend to start construction of the trail above it. If it happens that the CPUC and the crossing gets resolved and we have a plan moving forward with that and the funding, sufficient funding to build that as well, we'll do that at the same time or as soon as we can. But any reason why we can't start on one or the other. Is that helpful?
Yes, thank you very much.
I should
Look
mention
forward to it.
Okay, yeah, me too. Trust me. I really do. I should mention that the property in green to the north is actually in land bank right now status, and that will also be opened once this trail is completed, which is exciting. And also that we have about $700,000 of Measure WW that we're using on this, but we did receive a grant of $200,000 from the Bay Area Ridge Trail Council. It's Coastal Conservancy funding, and we received that just early this year. So there's a lot of support for this project, and we're all really happy. We really want to see it finished.
Sean, where's the area that's in land bank right now?
It's this area here.
Oh, part of Guerin.
It's called the Gelderman property, or we received it from the Gelderman.
Next to the Guerin.
Yeah, it's just south of it. And I'm unfortunately unable to, well, looks like our GIS layers are back up and running. If you look over to the right here, you see Guerin, Dry Creek. This whole property here is in land bank status. So the trail technically dead ends here. But once we have somewhere for people to go and not just mill around on a piece of property, we can open this piece here. And it's poised to go through the planning department. I've confirmed that all we need to do is open it.
Okay, awesome.
No board action there. Yeah.
Director Rosario?
Yeah, my question got answered. Thank you.
Great.
Anyone else? Okay, go ahead, Sean.
Well, let's move on to another easy project. I'm glad I got a laugh out of that. Okay, I was told not to make any jokes. That was serious. So the next project is a 3-mile trail. It's the Marsh Creek Trail. It's in preliminary design and permitting. We've received we hired Questa Engineering to complete a study and choose a preferred alignment. And I presented that alignment to the executive committee in November of 2019. And we moved forward with a CEQA document, which is an initial study and a mitigated negative deck. And I've just received that document this week. Sorry, I'm hearing a duck. We're going to review that. This is also a very culturally significant area. And so we will be going through all the steps that we need to go through to work with the local tribes and the permitting to ensure that we are eliminating or minimizing to the maximum extent any impacts to cultural resources here. The trail is proposed through the Marsh Creek State Historic Park, but also through the Contra Costa County Flood Control and Water Conservation District property near the reservoir, and it heads to Marsh Creek Road. It will need a bridge, Marsh Creek, and then includes a undercrossing that we're proposing to Round Valley staging area. We had like 3 public meetings, and it was the preferred alignment chosen and the preferred method of crossing Marsh Creek Road. It's a very, very dangerous road to cross. The speeds are probably 45 miles an hour posted, but people easily go 65. So we ran a traffic study and determined that with the equestrian community nearby and things, they like the undercrossing. But this is a view, I'll go through this as quickly as I can. See the inset 1 and 2 up top, it's the same preferred alignment, but I will zoom into that over here. So we're proposing to come across the street from the Trilogy at Vineyards Development, who is also developing a portion of the Marsh Creek Trail. It will cross at a modified crosswalk and then head into the John Marsh House area. We may have some staging in this area, parking area or something. And then it will head south to the dam. We then need to cross over the dam at this location. And it's pretty challenging because you have to come up, you have to go down, and you cannot damage the dam. So we've got some infrastructure there that will be costly, some retaining walls and things. But we may be able to get away with a viewing platform up here because it is pretty nice, as you can see. Next, if we go south of that dam down to Camino Diablo and Marsh Creek Road, we are to be a paved trail along the road. And that was also some feedback we received, is that one, it's such a long trail that might be eligible for transportation funding, but two, it seemed safer. It's not on the road, it's off the road. It is a class 1 separated paved trail we're proposing, but it is near the road that makes it easy to patrol and take advantage of any lighting that is out there, et cetera, et cetera. We are analyzing a bridge crossing of Marsh Creek, which will be included so far. And then as we move east, our engineers have come up with a undercrossing under Marsh Creek Road that will lead to our Round Valley staging area. We would like to improve some parking, maybe add some parking over there to accommodate any increase in use. And I'll give you an inset of what it looks like here. It's tall enough to fit somebody on a horse, although they'll probably need to dismount. And we've been working with the county to work on the drainage and work on what we need to do to get under that road safely that doesn't damage the road. This is, I'm skipping up a little bit again, but this is a view of an existing road across the flood control property that we're proposing to dip in on an existing road and pave it over. So the alignment's there, but I just love these views. When you're hiking, you can see it in the background. You can see Mount Diablo every day. Let me make sure my notes here. The estimated cost I just received is about 4.6 million. That's for construction. Pretty soon, I think we'll be, after we review the document and run through all of the Native American, the AB 52 requirements, we'll be coming back to the executive committee or the full board to adopt a CEQA document and accept the project. And when it's complete and at the end of this year, we'll have a report, an engineering report that shows us the methodology by which we can complete the trail, and we'll have an ISM&D, hopefully certified around that time, adopted. And then we get to decide from there how quickly we want to build this. And we are always looking for funding for all of these projects. So we'll keep an eye out parallel to this development.
Sean, Director Lane has a question.
Please.
Hi, yeah, I have a couple of questions, particularly as I know we had an alternate through the state park and people decided that was not a good idea.
Correct.
That's why we're doing the, skirting it and the reservoir, I'm assuming.
That's correct.
I am not a big fan of undercrossings, and they silt up, you can't see, etc. And I understood that they are a lot more expensive than bridges. So do I understand that right or not? And then I'm wondering if the trail, when it gets on the Round Valley side, is going through the state park for a little distance there or not.
Okay, I'll share my screen again, Director Lane. So because of the topography on either side of Marsh Creek Road, the grading and stabilization of the hillside and the approaches that are needed for a bridge would lengthen that bridge almost double the distance of the road, which does not equate to a cheaper option than an undercrossing, unfortunately. Undercrossings are, I think, you know, it's debatable whether they're more maintenance than a bridge over time. But it is something you have to deal with, drainage and things. And we are proposing lighting in there. The community there, the main feedback we received was that their horses don't like bridges. And we are trying to listen to the community. I'm sorry, there was a second part to your question.
Sean, I believe the general manager wanted to respond to that.
Please, I can't see him. I'm gonna open it up. Okay.
And Sean, if you can leave that up, I just think it's really important for the full board to see the scope of the Marsh Creek State Historic Park. I negotiated that purchase with the Trust for Public Lands on behalf of the state. I want to just reference that Tom Torlakson was senator at the time, was very helpful. But none of that is open. And part of the challenge we have, I mean, this is 15 or more years later, it's over 4,000 acres and none of that is open. Because of that, every time we propose anything on their property, there is a plan, and the plan does show the trail in the state park general plan. But it requires an additional layer of review and concern. I'll even call it hand-wringing, because that park's not open. So that's been one of the challenges that Sean has had, because we are skirting the state park, and that southern light green on the map, Sean could probably point that out, next to Round Valley, including the Round Valley staging area, is owned by the state parks. So they have no plans to do they have a plan, but they have no proposals to do anything. So anytime we have to propose something, they get concerned that we're opening up the park, or, you know, we're going to have to jump through every single hoop on archaeological review, because it's both the Cowell Ranch, which is historic, as well as the Marsh Creek Ranch, the John Marsh Ranch, as well as the Native American site, which is closer to the dam. So it's complicated as well, although the topography is pretty simple, rolling hills, not many trees at all. It is all these other hoops we have to go through for the state parks and other reviews. So I really wanted to support Sean in a great presentation, but this is the challenge. It's just, if that park had been open already after all these years and serving East County, in some ways it would be easy just to add the trail. But we're first in, and so we actually have to convince state parks, and flood control isn't a big problem on the blue, but it's been a major challenge. And I just wanted to emphasize what's a fairly simple, two bridges, a tunnel and a bridge, is a fairly simple but costly design, but getting it through the agency hoops has been really a challenge, including with the developer. So I just wanted to understand that, but that's a huge amount of parkland that is not open to the public.
Director Coffey?
Yeah, Sean, what is the status of the the Brentwood extension to the John Muir house that the developer was supposed to be building 2 years ago? What's happening there? That's the Concord Avenue to John Marsh.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for asking, Director Coffey. I knew you would. They are still battling. I won't say battling, but they are still attempting to get their rights of way. The developer will build the trail. That is established. Brentwood is supporting that, and they're going to work together with the developer to build that. But there's some Caltrans right of way, and there's some state park easements that they're still negotiating. I haven't received an update very recently on that, but my guess is that we were probably going to have to wait another year to see that built, unless I hear otherwise. But I will let you know when I do receive news or good, especially good news.
Thank you.
Sean, I have a quick question too about the undercrossing.
Okay.
I have some concerns that sort of mirror what Director Lane has mentioned. Of course, security is another one of them. Is this an area of, would this be an area of wildlife passage? Is this an area where we should be concerned about creating a link for wildlife to move?
I really appreciate you bringing that up, Director Corbett, because I forgot to mention that this is actually, I believe, in the HCP, and we would be looking to create a wildlife undercrossing, something for wildlife as well here, not just trail users.
So we'd probably need, I'm not the expert on this, but we'd probably need to see whether that, whatever type of crossing that ends up being is also, you know, available and usable and not scary for wildlife, if that was partly what we were trying to address. And I don't know if undercrossings versus wildlife overcrossings, which I'm more familiar with, I don't know which one works better in this circumstance, but I just throw that out there for consideration.
Director Corbett, that's really important, but also just a real acknowledgement that as Marsh Creek Road gets more traffic and faster, we're having a high level of wildlife kill on that road.
Yeah.
Including badgers and, you know, other animals. So getting, my understanding with what we've done with the HCP and other agencies is probably the undercrossing for the mammals we have. We don't have grizzly bears and elk, but we do have mountain lions. The
Well, we could.
undercrossing is probably safer, but you know, we're going to have those impacts are going to be addressed absolutely by the HCP and our permitting. So, but my understanding is the undercrossing is more applicable to the types of animals we have, but also it could be a wonderful benefit because the roadkill on that road is terrible.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for paying attention to that too.
Yeah, you know, I think that when you talk about the undercrossing, that you ought to absolutely mention that as a positive, because that's what we try to do is facilitate wildlife getting around.
Right.
And you could mention that mountain lions do discover these, and they have nice success at hanging out at one end, you know.
I wish I would have brought it up earlier.
So is that a vote from the mountain lion population for an undercrossing?
Yeah, that public meeting was very interesting, I'll say.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, I'll keep us moving.
Director Corbett, if I may.
Oh yes, please.
Yeah, just to do a quick time check. It's 12:17, and we have about 15 minutes before the break. So I just want to check, would you like to work through and finish Sean's presentation, or would you like to collapse it, finish with the last 15 minutes?
How much more time do you have in your presentation, Sean?
I think I can do the rest in 15 minutes.
All right.
I have 4 more projects and I'll try to move quickly. I realize it's a lot.
Okay, board, are we good for another 15 minutes before we take a 20-minute break? Everybody good? Okay, looks like it. Okay, please go ahead.
Great. I'll just get through these and maybe take questions at the end when we're discussing.
Yes, let's do that. Let's take our questions. Thank you, Sean.
So the next project is another half-mile of paved trail in Martinez. It's a San Francisco Bay Trail piece. It goes from the Nedgedly staging area to the Barralesa Street in Martinez. There is already a portion of the trail built to the west. There's a bridge that was constructed years ago that's sitting there waiting for a trail to come to it. The final design is underway. We're at about 95%. CEQA was completed in 2003, so it's pretty old, but we have determined that not much has changed there. There may be some additional mitigation that needs to occur, but we feel we can move forward with an amendment to that document. And the permits were received and the mitigation already implemented, but we were held up by the railroad. And currently we are somewhat struggling. I won't say, I hate that word, sorry. A challenge we're having is working with the railroad. They have promised to give us an easement along the right side of the railroad tracks here. You can see the bridge to nowhere, as we've called it, to the right here. The trail will come down and travel along the Union Railroad to Barrelessa Street up to the one criteria that the Union Pacific Railroad and CPUC have placed on us to implement this trail is to provide some crossing improvements to this at-grade crossing. It's a very challenging crossing. There's 4 sets of tracks. The Amtrak station is just to the right, about 50 yards. Trains every day, probably sees about 80 trains per day, they report. The infrastructure date, the signals are not in the right place. The platforms, the concrete panels that are in the roadway are their old versions. So if we touch those and want to make pedestrian and bicycle improvements, we have to replace them all. It's going to be a very challenging and costly proposition, and the crossing is owned by Martinez. So we're working through those. We've submitted our preliminary design to Union Pacific Railroad. We held a field diagnostic meeting on June 25th, and we have a traffic engineering firm working with the railroad's traffic engineering and signal consultant to try to come up with this proposal here. We'll see what is being negotiated, and we're going to see what it's going to cost. But that's where we're at with this project. Things are moving forward. I'm excited. We have Union Pacific at the table, we have the CPUC at the table, and we are getting close to having a design here. We have also hired Alta Planning to prepare an application for active transportation program funding. We feel the safety improvements to this crossing actually make that application stronger. Also, the Amtrak station being 50 yards is a strong candidate for transportation funding. And last but not least, the segment just a mile or so to the west, the George Miller Trail was awarded transportation improvement funds, Tiger 2. So we're going to highlight that as well. So this is the continuation of that. So we're hoping that application is due in September, and we'll keep you posted on our success.
Sean, could I just add to that on the crossing there?
Sure.
First, just this is a very complicated project, and just kudos to Sean and his staff for being diligent and persistent on it. The CPUC, the concern, I just want to clarify for the board, our trail will not actually cross the railroad tracks. It's parallel to the railroad tracks, but the concern is that if there are pedestrians, it will cause cars to back up or to have to stop on the tracks if pedestrians are crossing. So we are working, this is an important CPUC project to get their approval for that.
Thank you, Christina. Okay, I'll move on to another, I won't say it. This is a great San Francisco Bay Trail project in a beautiful area on the peninsula in Richmond. And it is design and permitting is currently underway. We think we can have the design and all the permits in hand by the end of this year. And we're also hoping at the same time, we're hoping that we have sufficient funding to move forward with construction as well. So we have some grants in the hopper. I will describe this overview for those of you who aren't familiar with the project. As on the bottom, you have the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge in the community of Point Richmond. We received an easement from Chevron for the green area, about 1.25 miles into the Richmond Point Malate Depot property and the Richmond Beach Park. That is the segment of trail that we're focusing on for our grant funding, and that is the segment of trail that we're hoping to build if Richmond gets their money and they want to contribute to the project. We have agreed to construct the entire 5 miles through the Richmond property to the Winehaven structure, the Winehaven Historic District. all at the same time. And we feel that if we do that, we'll capture some economies of scale, and it'll be a more efficient project and a wiser use of public funds. Right now, we have been awarded a priority conservation area grant in the amount of $1 million. And we are applying for Prop 68 funding, a Trails and Greenways grant funding, about $1.2 million. And the Recreational Trails Program through the state of California for $900,000. I'm going to zoom down. This is the estimated cost of this project. We, again, this is preliminary. We think we can lower our contingency to 10% since we're getting so close. As we move through these projects, we kind of start with a 20% contingency and we go down to 15, we go down to 10. Once we know we're all the unknowns have been revealed to us, hopefully. And so 3.8 million. And if we play our cards right and we get all these grants, we should know by September whether we do. Around the same time we're finishing design and getting permits, we may be able to put this project out to bid through the winter and hopefully begin construction next year. However, there is likely going to be a funding shortfall, which we'll need to supplement with other funding, Measure WW, CCFF, or some other grant. I want to show some things, other things, but I do want to get through this. But I will show you that this is the old Richmond Beltway rail line. And so that the surface is there. We're going to build the trail on the outside edge of that. We're acquiring an easement, not only for the trail, but we're working with Chevron to get the shoreline as well. So there'll be a little shoreline access there, a ramp down to the beach for fishing, just viewing. And then we'll into the beach park to the north. This is just a rendering. It's not exactly how it will look. Obviously, the stripe in the middle is something I have a problem with, but this is a beautiful park. It's a sort of hidden gem that you have to get on the freeway to get to right now. And so this is an important project. It is important for us to get this on the ground before anything else happens out there. We feel we want to establish our presence out here, a recreational presence. That eventually, if there is a development out here, will also be a transportation presence. So that we are working as fast as we can. We're getting close. All the permit applications have been submitted. We've received initial comments back and we're responding to those. So we think we're on track to get this project underway, hopefully, and out to bid by the end of this year, beginning of next year. I mentioned earlier that we do, I'm sorry.
We were going to take questions at the end so we could get through it, but do you need to ask your question now, Colin? Would you like to, Director Coffey? Can you wait a second? Okay.
I didn't hear the answer. Should I keep going?
Please keep going. I know
Okay.
there will be several questions for you on that item though, when we come back to it.
Okay, I will keep going just to get through. Another project I mentioned earlier, we do paved trails, we do dirt trails, we do bridges. So this one is both. This one is the Tassajara Creek Trail, and sometimes you will hear the term Tassajara Ridge Trail as well. The Tassajara Creek runs from around Dublin, Pleasanton, north towards Mount Diablo. I'm sorry, well, it comes downhill from Mount Diablo, but sorry, I'm talking. Let me move on. The trail project that we're focused on here is sorry, what happened? This development on the right, you can see it's graded here, but it is now complete. It's called Wallace Ranch. It's in the city of Dublin. They completed, as we mentioned before, we are constantly following developments of other jurisdictions out in the world. And when this came up, we got with the city of Dublin and we said, hey, they should build a trail. This is the alignment of the Tassajara Creek Trail. And they did. It was completed about a year or so ago, but it is landlocked currently. And as you look on the left here, you see we have a Tassajara Creek Trail staging area that's been there for some time. There's a bridge over a creek, but the paved section of the Tassajara comes from Dublin and around, connects to the Dublin Pleasanton BART station eventually. And, excuse me, and ends right here where the red arrow is. The segment of trail going from there is about a half a mile to the development. I feel this is proposed to be paved. We feel that this is transportation related because eventually it will connect Wallace Ranch to the Dublin Pleasanton BART station in a roundabout way. We've been talking with the Army for years on this, and I will make this as brief as I can. The eastern portion of the Camp Parks or the Parks Reserve Training Facility is a U.S. Army facility. The eastern portion of it in red here is a reversionary clause area that the Park District used to own. As a part of an agreement back in 1991, as a three-party exchange agreement, we gave this back to the Army. We received from the county the Camp Arroyo property, and the county received some roadway that they needed for Camino Tasajara. And it's a lot more detailed than that, but I'll leave it at that. As a part of that agreement, ignore the blue, there you see a little yellow part. The Army granted the Park District a 25-acre easement that was for trail purposes. So that fast forwarding, we've been talking with Dublin wanted to build a school over here. The Army was going to let you choose this site as a potential site. And thank you, Beverly Lane, Director Lane, sorry, at the Dublin liaison meeting for bringing up, no, there's a reversionary clause here. If you're not going to need it for the Army, we get it, Park District. And so that was taken off the table, but that initiated these discussions where we, with the commander that we finally connected with, Lieutenant Jennifer Nolan, saw our vision here and really, really embraced this trail project. And what we eventually landed on through many iterations and two base commanders was a transfer of land for additional land, an acre that we couldn't get around the creek and that tree there. And then into the red area and the green area to the right, and moving their fence over so we could fit our trail in there. And then while we were talking with them, why not actually close the gap and get all the way up to Windermere Parkway? So this is the north portion. You see down here is the Wallace Ranch development, and the trail terminates here. We can go into Camp Parks here, use the road, and get to Windermere Parkway. All of it requires minimization of the amount of land that we took from Camp Parks, and replacement of their fence, and one other criteria. We maintain the patrol road that they travel on along their fence. So they went for it, they agreed, and it is currently in the works. The Army Corps of Engineer Real Estate Division is drafting the easements as we speak, and we are looking for funds. It is, the cost of it's to be determined, but the lower portion here is paved. The upper portion will be a dirt road from the development up, and then it will meet the Windermere, at Windermere Park, meets the Tasajara Ridge staging area. So that's where it becomes the Tasajara Ridge Trail. And that will continue eventually to Mount Diablo. So exciting news here, I think.
Yes, thank you. Very exciting news. I think you have one more project to review. So if it's all right with the board, we'll just take another couple of minutes for Sean to give the overview of his last project, and then we'll take questions.
And I would just mention, Sean, on the Doolittle, the next project, the Doolittle Drive project, we've had several presentations updating us recently, and I think you may just be giving us an update on the Bay Trail portion of that work that has been presented to us, all the Caltrans plans and everything else. So I guess my point is, if the board is okay, this can be a fairly brief presentation, because I think we're pretty up to date on it. Does that sound okay, everybody?
Yes, thank you, Director Corbett. And actually, Sean was not going to present on the Doolittle Trail. That project is actually in Lisa's shop in Deco.
That's right.
So I believe Sean is just going to present on the Point Pinolda Wilson Point, was the last trail project he was going to give a presentation on, and then we'll take any questions.
Okay. So there's two more or just one?
Just one, and it will also be brief.
Okay.
I say it will be brief, but it is another very complicated project. So not to minimize its magnitude here. I know this is a very important trail project for many of you. It's the San Francisco Bay Trail from Point Pinole to Wilson Point. It's the last gap. Once we complete the Lone Tree Point gap this year, it will open up 30 miles of continuous bay trail from Rodeo to Oakland, and this is the gap. So it's important. The study completed in 2005. Right now, it's about 0.75 miles. That's identified retaining structures, wetlands, as well as 1,200 feet of 1,200 feet of utility relocation of high pressure gas, petroleum, and fiber optic. Right here in yellow, I'm highlighting the wetlands that will need to go through. Pink is the proposed trail. On the left is Pinole Point Business Park. And the developers in that park are developing about a mile of the trail, which will be complete this year. It will end at that first circle on the left. We'll either need to place fill or some sort of retaining structure within a wetland because the railroad is restricting our movement out of the wetland. It is tidal. We could also explore the use of a bridge with piers and things, which would drastically increase the cost of the project, but minimize the impact. And that second bubble on the right is another wet area that we'll need to navigate through. And then to the northeast, you have Montara Bay Community Park. This is Montalvan Manor. It's an unincorporated area of Contra Costa County. And the area I have highlighted in yellow there, the rectangle, is part of our renegotiated 2016 MOU with the railroad, which is going to allow us to build the trail in the outside 15 feet of their right-of-way in between the private residences there, and that will connect to the Wilson Point property here. Just an update of where we are with that. We're preparing an RFP to reevaluate this alignment and the engineering of it, but also begin preparing a CEQA document that will poise us. The benefit of that is it will poise us for grant funding for this. I think it's going to be expensive. I won't throw a number at it today, but with the utility relocations and the wetland navigation, it's going to be a big project. There is a potential for phasing this, I think, but when we do that, there's a danger of losing momentum and not utilizing the easements that we have from the railroad. We want to keep them engaged. And so I'm not recommending that right now, but the alignment from the Pinole Point Business Park to Montara Bay Community Park does have independent utility at this time. But so that's where we're at, an RFP for that, and I hope to get that out by the end of the summer. And but we're just working on the scope of work and about $20,000 in the budget to get that going. And with that, plenty of projects. I know it's a lot of information, but that's all I had prepared to really touch on today. But I like all the other projects in the story map. So if you have questions or want to see anything else, we can do that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sean. And just for clarification, I'm just trying to follow along the list of projects. So on page 15, we're up to, well, which list are we going on? Which list were we following? The one on the map, the one on?
I'm happy to, they're all the same. They're all the same numbers, but I can list out very briefly the numbers that I presented on if you'd like. Is that what you're asking?
No, that's okay. You can just, you can let me know that later, just for maybe in the future, having a list would help. Okay. And questions. I know we have some questions on Point Malati. Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you.
Director Coffey and then Director Rosario.
Sure, thank you. First, a question about the Montalvan Community Park to the Point Pinole Business Park that you were just talking about, Sean. As I remember when Director Lane and I were out there and taken a look at the site, we were told there was some adjacent property to the site where we had some type of right of utilization, but subject to the approval and a transfer of property interest from an adjacent property owner, and that was potentially going to take time and be potentially complex, or it could go very easily. I wonder if that was about a year ago. I wonder if we're better informed of how that's going to work at this point.
Oh, let me share this. You're speaking specifically to the Point Pinole Properties area that we visited?
Yeah, there was a site that had to be remediated and of no further real use to the developer there, and they agreed to transfer it to us. But, you know, there was an exercise of an option involved. It wasn't all straightforward.
Right. I believe you're referring to what is sometimes called the 15 acre remainder.
Yeah, there you go.
Property. Yeah. So the work to remediate the site and to drainage has been addressed, and the problems have been resolved by the developer there. And if the general manager or anyone else wants to jump in on any land acquisition, be my guest. But I do believe that eventually that the agreement says we are obliged to accept this property in the future, but we haven't done that yet. But the problems with the property, as far as I understand, there were some major drainage issues, have been resolved at this time.
Good. About a year ago, it was described as a potential hiccup. That's why I'm asking.
Okay. Yeah. The only hiccup I see here is just environmental impacts to wetlands due to construction at this point. You know, it's not really a hiccup. It's just part of doing business.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. On Point Pinole, my question was whether we had ever closed out and obtained that easement that we needed across that little piece of private property next to the pier. A private owner, we needed to get across a few feet, and it got legal and complicated, and I'm just wondering if that was ever done.
I'm sorry, did you say Point Pinole or Point Malate?
Point Malate.
Okay. Yes, we have acquired that little triangle piece from the owner.
Okay, that's done. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Director Rosario?
Yes, thank you. This is a great presentation.
Thank you.
Again, Point Malate. Is there, in view of sea level rise, do we have enough room for the entire trail to retreat back if need to? And the second part of that question would be that little beach you showed. Are we committed to saving that little beach? Because I think that little beach is going to be underwater.
We're not. I do not feel we're committed to saving that beach. I think that beach is without saving. The trail and the road that exists there is above sea level rise projections. However, we are performing some slope stabilization and bank stabilization all along in the areas that we've identified that may be a problem in 30, 50 years. This is, I don't know if you're familiar with rivers, but this is kind of an eddy. So it doesn't receive a lot of forceful action. It's sort of all that the stream kind of goes outboard of here, but this trail is not in danger of needing to be moved or washing away in the next 50 years to 100 years.
Great. Thank you.
Director Lane?
So on Malate, I understand that the way we are looking at it essentially now is totally addressing the trails and seeing that we can get our section done and maybe other sections, and the issues of land use beyond the trail is something that's very much up in the air. Is that correct?
I probably should answer that question. Thank you, Sean. Great presentation too. The city is under a very tight legal settlement timeline to approve a project or have to pay. And so the driver is that deadline, which I think fall. And so they're on a very rapid approval pace. Part of the concern now is because it's happening so fast, being able to push the development in different directions is a big challenge. The trail is independent, and we're moving forward on the trail to get that, you know, that foothold there. But advanced planning, similar to what Dennis said about other advanced planning issues, is focused on the project itself and the development and what will be open space. The settlement says that 70% of the property should be open space. But as you know, Director Lane, how you count that 70%, you know, a sidewalk, a landscape, a gully, you know, is very much up for debate. So it's probably not truly 70 acres of what we would consider open space. It means undeveloped. So that's where it sits. And it's on a very unique trajectory because of the settlement issues. You also have a lot of opposition to the development from the environmental community, including Citizens for East Shore State Park. But you also have a lot of people in Richmond who are pro development because, including the mayor, because there's no infrastructure like we found out with Concord and Alameda. So to get enough infrastructure there to save Winehaven and the historic buildings and generate sewer, water, and roads, you need a fairly big development, at least according to the economic analysis. So this is a very contentious discussion. The district will bring its expertise to the table on open space and park planning.
Thank you, Mr. GM. Any other questions, comments? Director Eccles.
Yeah, thank you, Sean, very much for the presentation. This is very informative, and I really appreciate all your hard work. And I'm particularly excited to see that you're pushing the Point Malate Trail really hard. That's an area where I think we can hopefully open that before too long, right? So it's a absolutely beautiful area. I was out there earlier this year, and yeah, looking forward to that. And also wanted to thank you for, looks like things are almost resolved now with Point Pinole and Wilson Point as well, or rather the Point Pinole to Wilson Point, fixing that gap in the Bay Trail, and spent some time out there with Britt Thorns before she retired. And again, that'll be a great addition to the Bay Trail. So very excited about that. Thank you.
I should mention that on July 24th, we have a virtual site visit with the Prop 68 grant team. We've moved into the second round of that. We're applying for 1.2 million. It's really important. We're coordinating, trying to get as much support and many people to support and wave our flag as we can on July 24th. If you're interested in hearing more about that, Director Eccles, please let's connect, and I'll let you know.
Great, thank you.
Sean, can you send that information to all of us?
I sure can. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to exclude the rest of you.
No, please. We'd be glad to help you. Director Lane.
If we're done with Point Malate, I have a small Tassajara trail. Anybody have some more Point Malate? Okay, Tassajara Trail, I'm really glad to see the progress on this. I have a question about our vision for the trail beyond what you talked about today. And that is, are we thinking that as the trail goes further north, that it will be paved as an active transportation trail, or will it be a dirt trail?
So I'm balancing between sharing my screen and wanting you all to have but I'll bring it up again. It was number 11. And so it's the lower half here, Director Lane, it makes sense for it to be paved on the left, the red portion here, because it's paved all the way to that point, and it's paved through Wallace Ranch.
Yeah, my question is beyond Wallace Ranch, next to Tassajara Road as it goes up to Finley.
Oh, right, way up north you're talking about.
Way up north.
Right. Well, at that point, it's
He froze.
Uh-oh, Sean, I think you froze.
That question was so challenging for Sean, it throws him out.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear. I broke out.
There you are. You're back.
Okay, sorry. Am I here?
Yes, you are.
Physically. So this area I think you're referring to here, Director Lane, this is where the trail currently ends. For it to become paved again for a section and go up into Mount Diablo might be awkward. So that really, you know, we're waiting to see what developments happen up here. We're waiting to see, you know, the activities. But right now, I just off the top of my head, I haven't really considered this being paved at that point.
Oh,
But
okay.
we're open to discussing it. But it might be word for it to go dirt, then paved, then dirt again. And this is really the beginning of a back experience all the way into Mount Diablo from here. So it might not make sense for it to be paved.
Yeah, okay. So I see what we're doing with the trail that you showed earlier is it goes into that Windermere staging area and then it goes along the open space up to this location, right?
Mm.
And it's a regular dirt trail there. Okay.
Right. It's Doherty Valley, if you recall, and then into Alamo Creek subdivision down. It's all multi-use. It's really a fire road.
Okay, I'll talk more to you about this. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah, I'm happy to take a walk as well, as always.
Yes, thanks.
Any other questions or comments for Sean? I have a few. Oh, Director Wieskamp, yes, please.
Sean, I am always amazed what your trio does. It's just incredible. I was excited about the Louis property. I was wondering if it was ever going to happen, but it looks like there's honest progress. And the city of Dublin, all those citizens are going to be thrilled with Tassajara. The mayor, frequently when I'm at a meeting, asked me about what's happening there. And
Okay.
I just think it's a great connection for people going to Barton, everything else. So you do a great job. So please,
Thanks.
from me, pass on to the rest of your trio. You are dynamic and your presentations always run over because all of us have so many questions.
Oh, I don't know if
always enjoy it so much. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Director
You're welcome.
Wieskamp. Director Waspie?
Thank you. I don't want to belabor this, but you didn't mention it, but it is highlighted, the Dunsmuir Heights Trail. I was very excited about that. And now does the problem or the challenge with a old landfill in there, is that going to kick us out for 10 years, 5 years, 1 year, or do you have any predictions?
Oh, I was sorry. I will say that I can't really say how long that may take, but we are told that remediating a landfill that hasn't properly been closed is expensive and is typically around 4 years.
Someday I will walk to a board meeting. It's my goal.
I see Director. Sorry, Dr. Ana Alvarez raising.
Oh, pardon me. I have a couple comments too. Deputy Director.
Yes, I just wanted to also include in the answer that the landfill that's left behind or not correctly tapped in the Dunsmuir Trail is the responsibility of the city of Oakland. So that's one more thing that we need to add in being able to get them to understand the importance to clean up that site and to correctly cap it. So we will be following up, and because that's the very important piece for our ability to be able to continue with the trail planning.
Okay, thank you very much. So Sean, I'll just say a couple things in closing. I think this is just another example as to why someday maybe we'll have just the trails workshop because we're always very, very interested and excited about this part of the mission of the Park District. And as we know, and as we can see, it's always been a popular part of the Park District, but even more so now during COVID-19. I mean, trails are where it's at, and if you poll people, you know, that's what they're using. So it's really, really important work. And thank you also for your forward thinking. And it's great. I'm waiting for you to change your name though from Trails Program Manager to Trails and Bridges Program Manager, maybe someday. And just joking. But also, thank you so much. The maps to me are so important, and also the overall map, because you know, as we spread our resources around and make sure we use our equity lens, for me, it's always important to see how not only do we connect parts of our park and our open space, but how we connect that to our neighborhoods. And that's always very important to me. So whatever detail we can on these maps to show what communities we're near and closest to, so we can make sure that we share those resources, is always really important to me. So thank you. And in your presentation, it was very helpful in some of the photographs near the communities made it clear where these trails are. But I'm just always into getting a little more of that kind of information. So appreciate it very, very much. And with that, Sean, do you have any closing comments before we take a quick break?
I just want to thank you again and let you know that I'm always available to discuss these projects. And so if there are any other questions about anything we're working on, please don't hesitate to email, call, get in touch. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And it looks like Mr. GM would like to say something.
Director Corbett, I just, for Sean, I just want to acknowledge the great work of the GIS coming from the old school of crayons and chalk. Just the evolution of our GIS system to be active on the screen like that. Sean, great job navigating it, but also please thank all the GIS staff. Just really, that's pretty complicated. It's multi-layers, and you are very fast. So thank you from a really great, I think really helpful to the board.
Well, thanks. I want to especially thank Christy McCaskey in the GIS department. She put that story map together, and it was awesome. So thank you.
Thank you very much to her too. Thank you. So everyone, it is time for a 20-minute break. We're running about a half an hour behind schedule. I say we stick with the 20-minute break because this will be our one big break. And so it is 12:56. So please be back ready to go as close. Let's just say 1:50. What time? Yeah, 1:15, ready to go. And we'll sign off for a little bit and see you then. Hello, it's 1:15.
Ellen, I'm here. I'm just trying to finish my lunch, so I'll turn on.
Yes,
the whenever
I
you're ready.
understand. It was sort of a quick eat, drink, and do whatever one needs to do. So we'll get started again here in a minute or so. Next up is going to be wildfire and wildlife, reducing fuels and protecting natural resources. So as soon as we have our board members, we'll be ready to go. Matt, are you on deck and ready to go too?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, thank you so much. We'll be with you in a minute.
Sort of toasty out here on the east
Is
side.
it how warm is it out there on the other side of the hills?
I don't know, but I stepped out to check my tomato and needed water. Mind you,
Have any turned red yet?
Oh, I have eaten some.
Nice. We've had some red ones in the Hayward Community Garden already too.
Yum, yum.
Yep. And some purple ones. I'll have to show some pictures someday soon. Okay, so I think we have everybody. Can we do just a really quick roll call, please, to make sure all of the board members are with us?
Okay, Director Rosario,
Here.
Director Coffey,
Here.
Director Lane,
Here.
Director Waspy,
Here.
Director Echols,
Here.
Director Wieskamp,
I think she's here.
Director Wieskamp.
Director Wieskamp, let's unmute Director Wieskamp, please.
Am I unmuted?
There you are.
Okay.
And Director Corbett.
I'm here. All right. Thank you all very much for coming back promptly. And as I just mentioned, our next item is wildfire and wildlife, reducing fuels and protecting natural resources. And first up is Matt Grawl, our Chief of Stewardship. Whenever you're ready.
Yeah, thank you, President Corbett and members of the board.
Sorry.
Brian Holt's going
Did I
to put
forget
the
something?
slides up.
AGM Kelchner, did I step on your introduction? Oh, I think you're frozen. Okay, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, and Christina is going to give a brief introduction, but I think Brian was going to put up the slides.
My
There we go.
apologies.
And
Here we go.
Director Corbett, this is GM. I don't see Ann. I don't know if she's on there or not. I hear her, but don't see the video.
Yes, we did see her. She did say aye on the roll.
Okay, thank you.
And are you still with us? And are you still with us? I'm pretty sure she's here. She did say yes. And yeah, there she is. She's here. Okay, very good. Pardon me if I didn't get the introduction straight. You guys have to give me a script. So whoever's up, please proceed.
Thank you, Ellen. That's just fine. Christina Kelchner, AGM of ASD, and I am just going to turn it right over to Matt, but we chose today to highlight one of the things that stewardship does, which is to be sure that we are protecting our endangered species and natural resources and habitat during fuels management. Obviously, the fuels management work that we do, the vegetation clearing, is extremely important for public safety. But why we are doing it, there's a whole other side of the house that works very hard under Matt's direction to make sure that we're doing it in a way that protects our natural resources. So we did choose to highlight that today. Obviously, our stewardship department is doing many important jobs for us, including protecting our water quality, working on blue-green algae, our IPM program, the reduction in glyphosate last year. And so many things that the stewardship program is doing, but we're just highlighting one this year. And also that I wanted to note that we did prepare for this presentation along with our chief of fire, the fire department, Eileen Tiley, and her staff, and she is present to answer any questions as well. And I've just been so impressed by the partnership between our stewardship department and the fire department and our park staff. So with that, I will hand it over to Matt Grahl to give the presentation.
Thank you very much, and welcome Chief Tiley as well.
Yeah, well, thanks, Christina. Again, I'm Matt Grahl. I'm the Chief of Stewardship for the Park District. And thank you, President Corbett and members of the board. Really appreciate the opportunity to talk today about our fuels management programs. It's something we've been working on stewardship for many years, but it's really a partnership, though, and how we do the work is really a partnership between the fire department and the operations department. And we're going to talk a lot about that today and really highlight the role of the stewardship department and the various programs in stewardship. But every program in stewardship has some role in fuels management. Even our water quality group occasionally will get involved with the help assisting on erosion control ideas on larger projects. That's not typical. We haven't done any of those large projects in a couple of years. I mean, of this scale. We did some very large projects that required to get construction general permits a few years ago, but we still do larger projects, but not any with that same level of ground disturbance. But again, many of our departments are involved in this work, and it's just very inspiring work at times because we can really improve the habitat while we do this work to reduce fire risk. And we can go to the next slide. Okay, so the district really puts a significant investment into our fuels management and our resource management during fuels management. But I really want to point out some of the activities before I start what we do. As you can think about these as we go through, a lot of the activities we do, brush thinning, pile burning, prescribed fire, and goat grazing, and even the forest thinning. It didn't get a picture here, but can really enhance habitat. And if it's done in the right way, if we design these things carefully with the right protective measures, and we're removing the certain types of vegetation, it can really enhance habitat. We can go to the next slide. And yeah, I just wanted you to really understand the roles in fuel management in the different groups and really implementing the plan. I think we all have larger roles in as far as planning the work, but really implementing our wildfire hazard reduction plan. There are various roles within the department. So stewardship, once we've defined a project and the fire's defined a project, we will work with the fire department. So as you see on both these columns, we have fuel treatment prescriptions in stewardship and fire. We work on that jointly together. It's really a joint effort to determine that treatment prescription based on our plan. And so we look at each site and determine what the fire department wants to do to meet their fuel management needs. And then we try to see how we can do that to really minimize impacts to wildlife in some cases, but also improve the overall vegetation quality that will improve the conditions for wildlife once we're done with the project. And so that's how we really approach things from the beginning. And then we move through the steps of implementing the project. So as we start implementing a project, stewardship then does more of the resource assessments as we're identifying the projects and then throughout the project implementation process. And so later in the slides, I'm really going to walk you through each thing we do during pre-project, during the projects, and post-project. But another important part of our roles is really the public interface. And we all have some level of public interface on these projects, but say fire really is the biggest public interface we have out there, because when they're doing projects and when they're working out there, they're regularly interacting with the public, regularly getting questions from homeowners about what their plans are or what we're doing in that area to support them. And we all play those roles at sometimes, but fire really does a lot of that public interface on the ground when projects are happening. And then we also coordinate all the projects with the operations department. So the whole group has monthly meetings, and we regularly share what our work plans are for the next few months, and make sure the operations understands what's planned and then understands how we can optimize what's happening to meet their needs. Often we will combine a hazardous tree contract with a fuels management contract to get some efficiency there, or alter the program of work slightly to improve some operational needs. So we're all really coordinating on how we implement these projects. So next slide. Okay, so just some background on the fuels plan. I know we've all seen this before, and I'll run through this fairly quickly but it's just to remind us on really the district's been doing fuel management for decades. The picture to the right shows an Anthony Chabot fuel break that was cleared in 1975 and established in 1975. We've continually maintained that fuel break in that location for many years, and we've been doing fuel reduction really since the inception of the fire department on a smaller scale back then. But now, after the Oakland Hills fire, there was a real need to do even more in the East Bay Hills, and so that's where we started developing our plan. And there was some initial funding in Measure CC, the first, when CC was first adopted to develop that first plan. And then we, finished the EIR for that plan in 2009, and that was what allowed us to get the FEMA funding from FEMA and qualify by doing that EIR. But it also, then the board adopted our plan in 2010. After that, we were able to get all of our federal permits in place with the biological opinion in 2013. And then it took us another 5 years to get our state permits in our ITP. It was a very complicated negotiation, and part of that time was also negotiating some of the compliance with the biological opinion and the conservation areas, which I'll talk about in a minute. And so in 2018, we really started doing the FEMA funded fuel work and really expanding our program by doing more thinning and working in sensitive habitats more in 2018. Next slide. So to do this work and this coordination, we have to coordinate with the fire department on a number of sites each year. Typically in the last few years, we've been doing 35 to 45 initial treatment and maintenance sites. The initial treatments, when we first go in and do the first treatment in an area, and then after that, we'll go back and maintain that area. Sometimes we need to expand that initial treatment area to do more either brush thinning or tree removal. But those, and then when I say this 35 to 45 number, we actually do many more projects to reduce fuels in the district and even in the fire department. But these are the number of projects that we have to document and report on in our plan, so that Stewardship's reporting on each year. We do other small scale projects that are outside of the plan area that don't have endangered species constraints, and operations does numerous projects, probably hundreds, maybe not, if not thousands of projects each year to reduce fuel loads along trails. But this 35 to 45 is the projects we do under our wildfire hazard reduction plan. And when we're working under that plan, there are numerous considerations for threatened and endangered species, nesting birds, and also the San Francisco dusky-footed wood rat, which is a species of special concern. And they build these big nests of sticks within the forests. And so we have to avoid those nests with buffers. And in some extreme cases where we can't avoid the nest, we have been able to get permission to relocate them. So we can do our fuels work in critical areas. But how we avoid impacts to those species is by using certain work windows, and we restrict our equipment seasonally. And we also are required by the agency to have biological monitors on site for most of the work. But I really want to point out this picture, though, while we're on this slide in the bottom left corner. That is an actual whip snake. And if you can just about see it in this photo, but it's actually eating a western fence lizard. And this was happening in one of our fuels management RTAs earlier this year. And so one of our fire captains was out and actually got this picture. This is an extremely rare sighting, but it just happened to be in one of the areas where we've thinned the brush. The top right corner shows an example of that in Anthony Chabot of brush thinning. This area was just an island. I mean, it was full of brush. It was a complete monoculture of coyote brush and a few other species, but it was just thick with coyote brush. And what we did is we went in here and created these shrub islands. So it's a little hard to see in this photo, but these grass patches throughout that photo were created to reduce the fuel risk there. And by doing that and creating those patches, and what you're seeing is an Alameda whipsnake in one of those patches in Claremont Canyon, an area where it's been cleared. And so they're able to they're able to see better, and then they're able to get some prey there. So it's a really rare sighting, but very interesting photo. Next slide. And so the regulatory responsibility is with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and they regulate the threatened and endangered species. So all of our project approvals require detailed environmental assessments And now that we have the permits, each year we submit our work plan to the agencies for review. We were concerned about that in the permits, and that it was going to take a while, but the agencies have been very good about approving our work plans quickly. And the fire department's done an excellent job of planning ahead, putting together work plans, and working with stewardship early on, and so we can get our program of work approved. And right now we're getting our work plan approved about a year ahead of when we need it. And so we've got all of our program of work for 2020 is already approved. And some of those, we've got more approved than we would likely need. So some of those probably go into 2021 because we have been regularly getting approvals. But we're going to keep doing that on an annual basis and making sure we can get all of our projects approved well in advance of when we need to start the work. And so then and these permits also require measures to avoid and minimize harm to the species. And they also require us to document all of our activities that we're doing to protect those species and ensuring that we're not having impacts. So, and we also require mitigation for the impacts to Alameda whipsnake specifically in this plan. And we've also had to do some special things because the Palomantinitas in Sibley and Huckleberry and Sobrante Ridge. Next slide. So as part of the permits, we've had to set aside land in 2 areas because of the permitted impacts to Alameda whipsnake habitat caused by brush clearing. So because of the scale of the plan and the number of sites we're going to be managing, we have to preserve 645 acres of whipsnake habitat in Tilden Regional Park and in Ohlone. This area in Tilden is the very northern end of Tilden. It's really, we thought for years it was in Wildcat, and all of us thought it was just Wildcat. We called it Wildcat. But when we did the actual maps, it turns out that it's in the edge of Tilden. But basically, it's 2 properties. They're divided up. The bulk of the acreage is down in the Ohlone area, and there's really good whipsnake habitat down there. And so those conservation areas will have a long-term management plan that's approved by the agencies. And we have a long-term management plan that has been approved, and we're just going through the final stages of giving the property lines established for both of those easement sites. And as you probably remember from earlier this year, and I'm sure you do, that we adopted an agreement with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife that would prevent us from having to do costly endowments to fund that long-term management. So later this year, we'll be coming to you with a board item to fund the first piece of this reserve fund that will provide the assurance to the agencies that we have money set aside to manage the conservation lands in Tilden and Ohlone. And so that will be coming, but the picture here, just wanted to point out to you, that's another whipsnake, and that whipsnake was trapped as part of our research and monitoring in the Ohlone Regional Wilderness. As part of establishment of this conservation easement, we were showing that there are whipsnakes present and wanting to identify and look at the area and really assess the habitat. And through that, we were able to trap this whipsnake. Okay, next slide. And so when we go in to do work in a site and we get one of those work plans approved, and we've got the fuel management prescription developed with the fire department, and we do the site specific work plan and get our regulatory approval, then we have to assess the site in more detail for special status species and cultural resources. And that's really part of the work plan, that assessment. And after stewardship does that site assessment and we have the work plan ready to go, then we work with our biological consultants to conduct training with the staff that will be on site, and to also make sure we have all the schedules in place. So we have the right biological monitors and the right training before each phase of work and each day to make sure things are being done correctly. And so we get all that in place, so we're ready to start the project. And then we also do a lot of the pre-work assessments and nesting bird surveys. So even after we have a work plan, we have all the sensitive areas flagged, we have to go out and do surveys. And even if we think we have everything correct, we often find active nests in some areas. So we really try to limit our work in areas of active nests, or we do. I mean, and we set up buffers to make sure any nests that are active within a fuel area are protected. And we keep that work out of those areas until the nesting has been completed and the nest is fledged. And then we may go into a site and do some vegetation management in an area. But we strictly avoid any disturbance in nesting birds when we're doing this veg management. And then we also have to compile all that data and those monitoring surveys to really demonstrate the work we're doing to plan and put together these projects. Next. So then during work, I talked about the planning for those trainings and the compliance checks, but those happen on a regular basis while we're doing the work. And then we have to support and submit these daily monitoring reports to the agencies. So we don't necessarily submit them every single day, but we collect the daily monitoring reports and submit them with our regular monitoring reports. We also make sure we're maintaining buffers during the work for the bird nest or the wood rat. We also, with our fuels ecologists, we coordinate with the monitors and the project manager during the work. Often there are some issues of how we might do something, or if we have a difficult issue, we will work together to resolve that. Occasionally, a contractor may want to do things differently than we've required them to. And so if they're doing that, we work with them to resolve those issues. Stewardship works directly with the fire department to find ways around these issues. If we need to change the work plan, or if we need to change how we're doing the work, or the timing of the work, or delay something to avoid a species, that's exactly what we'll do with the contractor. And we also respond to public inquiries during the projects. We often get questions about plans for future work, or what something will look like later, or how it's looking while we're doing the work. And we often address a lot of those questions on a regular basis. Next slide. And then after the projects are done, we have to do all the post-project assessments. So that involves setup, post scheduling. I mean, we have 120 RTAs. And after we do that initial entry and start maintaining those sites after the initial entry, we have to then start doing regular post assessments to assess that work. And so that's a very big scheduling effort to schedule all those sites and make sure we can get to them throughout the year. We also have to establish photo points for every recommended treatment area. And so there are multiple photo points for each treatment area. And then we have to go back after we've done that work and look through those post assessments and photo points annually through the treatment areas. We also assess project areas for noxious weeds after treatments have happened. And we do some of that noxious weed assessment also ahead of time. And so an IPM then works with the fire department to develop plans and treatment schedules to make sure we don't create weed problems after we've been doing our management. And this is really going to be an ongoing effort. And as we do more and more work, we're going to have to really continue to expand that program and make sure we're really managing our weeds. And we have a variety of tools that we use for that work. Also, we have to again compile all that data, compile monitoring reports, and then we have to report quarterly and annually to the agencies on the work we're doing and how we're complying with our permits and meeting all these conditions. Next slide. So then how are we funding all this work? So the funding for fuel management compliance really comes from often from our grant funds. So for FEMA and the pre-disaster mitigation funds, FEMA funds that environmental compliance. And then for our work that's outside of the FEMA funded areas, we have to rely on Measure CC, which is almost gone now. And now we're transitioning into Measure FF. And so that's how we funded some of the work, but this doesn't always cover all of the needs. And so often we have to rely on Park District's general fund for additional funding. And when we can, we work on grants. And we've acquired grants from the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection and the Diablo Fire Safe Council. And we've also gotten pursued grants from other entities. These are often our two most common grantors. And I also wanted to mention, though, that on Measure FF and Measure CC, there's the fuels ecologist that supports the fuels management program. That's Kristen Van Dam, and she's the one that really coordinates all this work that I'm talking about pre, and during, and post projects. Her position is funded, initially it was funded through CC as a 0.6 FTE, and that funding was extended into Measure FF as a 0.6 FTE. And that's the one stewardship position that's funded through these measures for the ongoing support of this work. The other stewardship staff that support the work are funded through the general fund. And so in order to do fuel management and restoration, and there's a lot of opportunities for fuel management and restoration in these areas. We have been looking at this for a number of years, opportunities to restore some ecological conditions and habitats within the fuel management areas. There's a really great opportunity to restore and expand native habitats. In many areas, eucalyptus has encroached in these areas and is shading out a very diverse native understory. And when we thin those eucalyptus, we really see those plants just start thriving and coming back. And so we're really looking forward to expanding this program. There's also importance of eradicating harmful invasive weeds. There's numerous invasive weeds that are creating fire risks within our plant area. French broom is often a big issue in many of our fuels areas. It grows in a way similar to the coyote brush and can grow in large stands and get very dense with the French broom. And so we're really trying to manage that in a way where we don't have the recurring populations coming back. Same thing with poison hemlock. Also, we can expand the pallid manzanita populations by doing this. So by thinning of overstory, we can really enhance populations for the pallids. Our pallids have been really impacted by encroachment of vegetation and other things that are shading them out. And they're also, we're really struggling with Phytophthora cinnamomi in that pallid manzanita population. But by doing fuels management work and really opening up habitat, getting them more sunlight, and looking at how we can increase their populations, we think we can really improve their populations through careful fuels management and by some other techniques to really encourage reseeding of those and a reestablishment of pallids in Huckleberry, Sobrante, and Sobrante Ridge. Next slide. Okay, so Measure FF did provide us some money for restoration within the fuel management areas, and that will provide $1.4 million over the life of the measure. So that money has not been appropriated yet for restoration, but Stewardship's already starting to think about it. So we started doing a study last year, and we're continuing it this year, really starting on the groundwork. But we did a study with Lech Nomovich of the Golden Hour Institute, and we did present on that study at the last Stewardship seminar. But really what we're doing in that study is looking at doing some modeling of habitat conditions, looking at slope and aspect and soil conditions, rainfall, other things like that, the other factors that will encourage vegetation growth and the habitats we want to see. And so we did that as far as looking at large data sets that are existing and the physical conditions to identify good areas that have good restoration potential or restorability here, I said, to make that a little shorter. But the restoration potential, we're looking at that now. And now what we need to do is go look on the ground at those sites that we've identified in the GIS and start really identifying specific plans and concept plans for that restoration. And so as we do more of that, we will be talking to CNPS and others. And many of their active members have been very interested in this for years. And so we'll be developing those plans and working with our partners to start implementing them in the next few years as the funding becomes available and we identify the constraints around doing the work and what we can do. We'll probably look for some easy wins and probably also look for some more complicated projects so we can look for grants and other things that we can use this money to help do a match for a grant. So we can really make that money grow and do much more with the money than just the 1.4 million. But we already are starting to set up a few partnerships. Actually, I need to go back. We already are starting a few partnerships to do some restoration outside of the FF money. The California Native Plant Society has approached us about doing some oak regeneration and create more of a shaded fuel break in some areas. And so we're going to be working with them to plant some acorns and plant some oaks in some areas that would create a more shaded fuel break. And we're looking to do that. Hopefully we'll get that started later this year, but we're still kind of working through that with them. And we've also been working with Urban Tilth for a number of years on other projects. And we had been working with them in Wildcat Creek area. And they have a youth training program for people who finished high school and really need some job skills and to get them ready to go to either a school, a university, or to get into the workforce. So they're doing a training program teaching them about restoration and watersheds. And so we've been working with them in Wildcat to do restoration on Wildcat Creek. But now we're going to look at doing more work out at Miller Knox with them. We're looking to manage French broom and other plants to really enhance habitat. So we're going to be looking at ways to reduce fuels and enhance habitat in a way that can really help them learn about grassland and chaparral restoration of that habitat. So we're excited about that partnership. It's a great program. And we're really just happy to be able to work with Urban Tilth and help support their work. Okay, next slide. And so one other thing we do for fuels management that is not part of our wildfire hazard reduction plan specifically is our cattle and sheep grazing. But that's something we do throughout the district really to manage fuel loads in our grasslands and to maintain good habitat conditions. As most of you are aware, these lands were grazed by elk for many years before, and those herds of elk are now gone. And so our grasslands really have evolved with some level of grazing. And so with well-managed grazing, we can help emulate that historic condition and really enhance our vegetation populations and also reduce fuel loads. So that's how we really try to maintain our cattle and sheep grazing. But then we also, within the plan areas, we use goats a lot. So we do seasonal goat grazing in the spring and the fall. Right now we have 3 contracts with 3 companies, and they bring in around 10,000 animals a year and regularly manage about 750 acres to reduce fuel loads. We have done other goat grazing in stewardship, and sometimes we've used goat grazing in the winter because sometimes the herders need areas to move their goats, and we have areas that we can do enhance the grasslands or enhance certain habitat by bringing in goats to reduce the thatch, and often we'll see an increase in native plants and wildflowers after we do that goat grazing in certain areas. So we've done some targeted, but we also do a lot of goat grazing, like I said, the 750 acres a year to manage our fuels. So that's the overview of the things we're doing, and that's really kind of the end. We can kind of go to the next slide. But I just really wanted to emphasize really just this work, the importance of this work in stewardship, the benefits that it can have, and also just really the partnership we have with the fire department in doing this work. And so I think Eileen's here, and I was going to have Eileen maybe say a few words about our partnership and how we work together.
Yes, absolutely. Please, Chief Tiley. Thank you, Matt. That was wonderful.
Hi, everyone. Matt, it was a really great presentation. I think the message that I would like to add to that, and I think I'm in a unique position to be able to communicate it, is that none of what the fire department does as part of the wildfire hazard reduction and resource management plan could happen without stewardship. I was trying to think of the right word to describe the situation. In my mind, it's a linchpin. And the linchpin is kind of the piece that holds a unit together. And a chief before me, Chief Swanson, used to like to call the fuels meetings that we have monthly an interdisciplinary fuels meeting. And there was a lot of wisdom in that because it really is interdisciplinary. With climate change and all of the rest of the world kind of discovering that fuels management is really very important to our communities and keeping them safe, I've had a lot of different agencies reach out to me, and some of them have bits and pieces of what we have. They may have a fire department, but they don't have a stewardship department. Operations is overworked and can't quite fulfill their role in it. Nobody has the trifecta that the Park District has here with fire department, stewardship, and operations all working together. So I really can't express enough how much stewardship being as a major factor in the plan has made it successful. In fact, I hope to be able to introduce to you all someday, not virtually, but actually in person, the incumbent assistant fire chief that will be coming to the Park District. He's coming from CAL FIRE, and he's run their vegetation management plan. And one of the big draws to the district for him after working with CAL FIRE for 26 years is the fact that we had a stewardship department, because he believes that without a stewardship department or a resource management department to help you get these kinds of things done, you really can't. And so that was a big draw to him. So here to support Matt and stewardship department. I feel like we're kind of all in the same department, really, working together, because we are. So kudos to the stewardship department, and I look forward to continue to move forward in our plan with them. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thanks, Eileen. I really appreciate Eileen talking about the background of the new assistant fire chief. And I just want to use the opportunity to acknowledge the outgoing retiring fire chief who just retired, Brad Gallup. And Brad has just been a tireless worker on this plan, and we wouldn't be where we are today without Brad's work. And he's really helped organize things in a great way in the fire department and in the way they work with stewardship also. And so a lot of that work plan approval I talked about earlier wouldn't have been possible without Brad's leadership and organizational skills. And that's really was so helpful to this. And so I was nervous when he retired, and and so it's great to hear we have someone with the background coming in who really wants to do, has been doing fuels work, and it has this as a priority for them. So Good to hear. And it looks, General Manager Bob.
That
Doyle
was
wants-
very nice recognition of Brad. I know we're all going to miss him a lot. I have a feeling he won't be too far away in case someone needs to ask him some questions. So
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah.
General
President
Manager.
Corbett, I think.
Oh,
You
yes.
see him. You see him. I just want to make sure.
I
you
see
saw
him.
Bob.
I do see him, actually.
No problem.
You're not screen sharing, so I can see him.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And my compliments to everybody and a little bit of context. My first job in the district was in 1973, and it was cutting the Tilden fuel break. And I know that both Dennis and Dee have worked on those things as well. We've been at this a really long time. And what's interesting, if you look at the amount of work it takes to get permits, to do monitoring, to include interested parties such as environmental groups, it is really a huge body of work. I know nobody in the state of California other than CAL FIRE that is done this amount of detail. And we are in the urban interface, so there's far more people involved and concerned. I have to make my little Colin Coffee joke about pro goats, and I just remind that we pay for goats, sheep and cattle pay us. And so goats are great. Everybody loves them. They're small animals. I guess there was an issue recently with an electric fence, a little shock on a puppy. But I do think it's really that context is important. I also want to acknowledge Christina Kelcher, who really brought home the environmental endowment policy, because what Matt just mentioned earlier was the mitigation we have to do and the money we're going to put in. That would have been millions of dollars, literally. So I hope that other parties, in addition to the board staff and in the public, are paying attention to the amount of detail, caution, but work that's getting done. And I think it's tremendous. I frankly think the board deserves a big award for it, because I think it's an example for other areas, including Southern California and other places and state parks. But we're really only at the beginning. So it's taken so long to get here, and we're here, and we're now really starting to get the wind in our sails to get this work done. We've got this great talent on board. We've got the fire department. I mean, we have a fire chief who worked in stewardship department. You couldn't have a better situation than that. So when people talk about, gee, it's been a long time, maybe we should, redo this, because it has been a long time. We're only really starting to seriously implement what we approved years ago. It's taken so long to get the permits and to get through the process. So we're not in the middle. We're really in the beginning. And I think it's in a way, a historic moment to hear this report at this level of detail. And I just really want everybody to have that context, because this has been a very public, very contentious, a lot of concern, a lot of controversy. And I just want to recognize the staff at the level of detail they're paying, not just to fuel, because if you recall, that was a big controversy that, oh, this is all being led just by fire, and we're going to go in there and clear it all out. And that is just not the case. We have listened, we have learned, and we have a team that's working absolutely together with stewardship as a lead partner. I think that needs to be in the record. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. GM. And it's very clear this is something we do really, really, really well. So let me open it up. I know there will be comments and questions by board members. Director Lane.
Yes, thank you. I really appreciate having an in-depth report like this for all of us. And I particularly appreciate the calendar of dates that you put up, Matt, because we do forget that it took us several years to put together this wildlands management plan. And that while that was 2010, it took us forever to be able to get the permits and to be actually doing the work on it. So I think that's worth our remembering when you have people who come in and say, oh, you ought to just redo it. And rarely have any idea either of what went into the plan or the fact that we weren't able to get to it until relatively recently. Then I have another odd thing I'd like to add, because one of the things that we talk about is trying to involve different populations, young people in working on various projects that we have in the parks. And, we just adopted Concord Land Use Plan. And one of the things that I think is important that we could begin to do before we get to opening the larger part of the park is to begin to reforest next to Mount Diablo Creek. And this particular plan is right there inside the largest city in Contra Costa County that has some populations which we need to be paying attention to, and people who, young people who need to find out that there are possible jobs in a park setting. So I know it's a workshop on wildlife and wildfires, but I just want to set that down and ask people to remember that we have population in Concord that could be working on our land use plan in this and planting things which take a little while to grow and could be a very constructive part of looking forward to having people use this park. So thank you. And I also want to say that I did meet Brad Gallup when he used to work in Peralta Oaks on GIS. Remember that?
Yeah.
And I thought he did just a great job doing GIS. And when he said he was going to the fire department, I was like, why? So now we know why. And I want to congratulate him for his service to the Park District. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Director Lane. Director Rosario.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is a great, another great presentation. Thank you, Matt. I just have a couple of questions. One is, my interest in trying to reduce the use of garland. We had talked about, I think I brought this up a couple of years ago, about possibility of setting aside a parcel where we could try alternative means of removing stumps other than garland. If that's a possibility, that would I think that would be a good place to start. And then another question is we have all these records that we're maintaining. Are those surveys available to the public or the board?
It gets a little dense. So what we've started doing is putting our quarterly reports up. So yes, we've got our quarterly reports we submit to the agencies. We've tried to make them in a little bit more user-friendly summary of what has happened. And so we've put those on the website, but the detailed daily reports and the specific things, if someone would request it, they could certainly have access to it, but it's a bit dense. There's just a lot there that has to be compiled to make it meaningful.
Okay.
So, but that's what we do. That's how we've been posting the reports. And there will be more as we move forward. I mean, we're looking to do even more monitoring and expand our monitoring throughout the area in a more comprehensive way, not just site specific. To really look at this whole area. We've been doing some studies on that level too, but we're just working at compiling some of that data.
Okay, great. And then my last question is with invasive plants, I think there's a huge opportunity to incorporate more volunteers once we figure out how to do that safely. Because I know I've got several people, constituents who volunteer on a regular basis, and they would like to have access to those fuel break areas so they can do some work in there in a non-toxic way. So anything we can do in that venue would be, I think would be a boost, because I think, you know, volunteers, they want to be part of the solution. And so if we can look at that, that would be wonderful. But otherwise, I think we're doing great. You know, yeah, I think we're, in terms of fuel break management, we are the only game in town in the Bay Area. So kudos to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Rosario. Director Waspy,
Yeah,
another firefighter.
yes, thank you, and thank you, Matt and Eileen. I really appreciate the attention to and the level of detail that you do when you describe this. And you know, as we get these reports, it's great to know. As you know, my constituents think that all you needs for a fuel break is a couple of chainsaws and a little bit of fire, and we can clean everything out. So, one question, I think I know the answer to this, but so in the Warump area, the geographic area of the Warump, if somebody wanted to expand that, it would initiate, what would it initiate? A whole new EIR, a programmatic EIR, well, what would it involve? More permitting, more, is it easy, is it hard?
I think the basic question, it really depends. I mean, on where we're doing the work, but I think at a minimum, and Christina may be able to answer this better than I could. I mean, but it would really depend on the area. I mean, I think we could amend, do an addendum without reopening the entire EAR, I believe. But it may be better just to do a separate environmental document. But it would really depend on where that work's happening. If it wasn't an endangered species habitat, we wouldn't necessarily have to have all of the same permits. We may just need CEQA for that. But it would really depend on the location. If we do have endangered species present, then it would be the same level, but we would need some level of a plan and then a CEQA analysis of that plan. And so, you know, Christina and Eileen want to add.
I would just say that, Matt, you're exactly right, that it depends on the scale and the scope and the site specific about what species might be impacted. But I will say it wouldn't be easy. Not that we couldn't do it, but all of this work is challenging with the permitting. General Manager.
Well, thank you, Christina, but thank you, President Corbett.
I saw you.
I know you did, but anyway, I forgot to mention a really important part of this, and it really needs to be referenced. We had 5 lawsuits on this plan. So I also, and Christina was in that department, I want to really acknowledge everyone back from Ted Radosevich to Carol Victor, because it isn't just permits, it's also the disagreement amongst citizens. That's the best way I can say this. The polarization of what are you cutting, how much, to the how you're restoring, to you should cut more. There is just no question that delay in moving forward to the level we are now was equally lawsuits as permits. And I'm absolutely confident that that's a true statement, maybe even more, because there's still some litigation going on. And so it's just very hard once you reopen that box and unpack it. It's not just the permit issue, it's not just the cost issue, it's the debate issue. And we debated this plan, as the board knows, for a decade. And then we were sued, and it wasn't just us sued, other people were sued. Even the money we got was sued over. So I just really want to thank the board's resolve to go the legal route and protect our plan and defend it, and realizing how important the legal reviews are on all of these things. Because there's just a lot of polarization in this day and age. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. GM. Any other board members? All right, I'd like to say a couple things. First of all, it's so great to see such important sections, silos, working so closely together. It's just a nice thing to see. And obviously, practically speaking, it's necessary. And it makes me quite excited and happy just to be part of a plan that is such a symbiotic relationship, making sure that, we mix science and fire together. And it's not just fire science, but natural science, and the importance of natural science as fire mitigation and how it all blends together. The more native species we have, the better fire prevention we have. And that's important for natural reasons too. So it's just a really exciting thing to see how this all comes together and how we, have such an amazing plan going on. We should get some awards, but not us, Bob. It should be the staffers that are working so hard to make it happen, because it is amazing. I have a couple just little questions for you, Matt. With regard to the partnerships, I don't know if there's room for this, but I'm hoping as we work with the partners that you have listed, especially since we're talking about restoration of native species, we can also work with some of our partners who are very concerned about pollinators that we've been hearing from, because obviously pollinators go right along with plants, especially native plants. So did you want to say something about that?
Oh, well, I was just saying we're already doing, we got some funding to do some work at Point Pinole recently, got a grant from the Wildlife Conservation Board. So we're going to be enhancing monarch habitat there. And as part of that, we'll be doing a lot of pollinator planting. So that's one example. But yes, but more. We could do some more in the field break too.
Great. And some of it will, some of it will happen naturally, as it should, because of the work that you're all doing. With regard to, again, about the overstory, does diminishment of the overstory have any impact on Phytophthora and how it spreads? Is that a benefit to the reduction? Do you know?
Well, I think it can, in the sense that in one real direct way, that young bay trees often can be carriers, and they can carry it in very high amounts. So one thing we're doing in Sobrante Ridge, not necessarily associated with fuels, but just to better protect the pallets there, we've been removing the young bay trees around the pallid manzanitas. So that can help. I'm not sure about just stopping. I think it could, since it's transported by fog drip and water movement, it may, but I haven't seen any specific studies or things to show that. So.
Yeah, but I was just thinking bringing in more sunlight hopefully helps the, not.
Well, certainly, it's different. Phytophthora cinnamomum.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. With the pallets, once you do that, they become healthier, and so they become more resistant. So once they're open to sunlight, so I don't know if it necessarily reduces the pathogen, but it makes the plants stronger that they can withstand it better.
Okay. All right. And that's all I have. But again, what a really fabulous program, and we are way ahead of so many others, partly because of some of our history with regard to fire, but and thanks to everybody who's been involved in this district for very many years, stopping fires and mitigating and creating a better habitat. And I want to see one of those whip snakes someday, Matt. They look like they're doing.
I have to say, they're typically rare, but this year we've seen quite a few. We did another study in the Ohlone, so quite a few, but in our fuels treatment areas, I think we've had at least 3 observations this year.
Very cool. All right. Any other questions? Yes, AGM Kelchner.
Thank you. Just want to thank Matt for his presentation and Chief Tiley for being here and all of her support. And also a shout out to Chief Chabura. It's wonderful to have a chief of public safety who really understands the importance of stewardship and the role that public safety can play in that. So appreciate his support as well. And Director Corbett, I'm glad you mentioned Tony. Thank you. It really does make a difference to have that support and stewardship. And I'm glad you mentioned Phytophthora. Just another shout out to work that Stewardship is doing is ongoing studies and research about how to protect against spreading Phytophthora when we're doing planting in our district lands. So with the mention of using volunteers, it's just one more complicating factor to be sure that we are sourcing our plants correctly. So just so many aspects that the Stewardship Department is managing, including doing all of this same kind of work for resource protection for our routine maintenance projects, for our capital projects, the pre-work surveys, and all of this work that we do for fuels. Stewardship is doing that every time we touch the land, and to be sure that we're not impacting in natural resources. So just really appreciate Matt and his team for all the work that they do. And with that, I think we are scheduled for another break. What we have left is one presentation from Lisa Gorgian, our Chief of Design and Construction, with the capital projects update, and then time for public comments at the end. So Director Corbett, I'll turn it to you.
Yes, so board members, would you like to take a quick break, or would you like to have the last presentation? Go to the next presentation? I can't tell. Is that for break or for presentation? What?
For a little break.
Oh, break. Okay. All right.
Go for a break.
It's very short, 10-minute break.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, that means we're back on the call at 2:20. Okay. All right. See you in 10 minutes.
Hello, everybody. It's 2:20. It's time for us to go on to the next item. Can we just check real quick and make sure all the board members are here? I see Director Eccles, Director Rosario, Director Lane, Director Coffey, Director Rossby. Director Wieskamp, are you with us? There you are. I see you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right. So our next item on the agenda is restoring habitat, connecting to nature, and capital project updates. And I won't interrupt into the presentation at this point, like I did last time. AGM Kelchner, please introduce your panel.
Thank you so much, Director Corbett. I'm going to ask Lisa Gorgon, our Chief of Design and Construction, to provide the board with updates on our capital projects. As I believe the General Manager mentioned, or someone mentioned earlier in the meeting, the team has done a wonderful job of moving forward with these projects despite the challenges of the shelter in place. And DECO actually has, when we say DECO, we mean Design and Construction Department. Design and Construction has over $42 million worth of projects in active construction in 2020. So it's just every year, we think this is our biggest year yet, and every year is bigger than the last. So this is the fruition of many, many years. These projects have been in the works for many years. It's a culmination of a lot of work by a lot of people, and we're just delighted to be able to bring you these updates. And with that, I will hand it over to Lisa.
Thank you very much and welcome.
All right, well, wonderful. Well, good afternoon. Thanks for hanging in there. I'm Lisa Gorgon, Chief of Design and Construction. Thank you again, President Corbett, members of the board. I wanted to give a little bit more detail to the information that's been provided in the workbook. So as Christina said, I'm just gonna provide an overview. And then if there's questions, I can, at the end, we can stop and go into more detail in areas where you would like more information. I would like to just take a moment though to, as Christina mentioned about design and construction, our department is 27 people and environmental programs is as a mighty team of 2. And this has been a challenging time for us, just working apart from everybody, but the team has done such a tremendous job at moving projects forward, and they're very mission driven and care about the work. And so I just wanted to express my gratitude to them, and then just share that I feel very grateful to work with such a high caliber group of folks. So with that, I'm going to start. Brian, I think, can you advance those? So as we get started, just as a reminder, we have about 74 projects that we are working on. They're in various phases, and we have, we're growing our portfolio of projects that are restoration projects. We've been working really closely with Stewardship as we transition to work on those projects. We also continue to work on projects that expand the district's assets. So we're really working on projects that are new, that require, they're going to need to be taken care of once they're done because they're not already part of the district's portfolio. And then really half of our work is still major maintenance and repair. So I think I've shared before, I'm so proud to work at a district that really takes care of what we have, takes care of our infrastructure. To the right, there's this is just one snapshot of the Doolittle Trail connection that we're building at Martin Luther King Jr. Park. This is a critical connection, and this is a before and after of or existing and what's proposed to really connect 2 key pieces of that park that are now separated along by this gap along the way in the Bay Trail. Okay, Brian, you want to advance. I wanted to show geospatially where we're working across the district. So this is kind of tiny, but it is in your workbook. And we really, again, try to think about the projects in terms of the phases they're in and how they are across the district. So I think there's lots of reasons why we want to show this. One is, just to show the work we're doing. It also helps us align staff resources about where they're working, and just gets a better understanding of if there's ways we can leverage different areas where we're working as well. Next slide. So I want to talk a little bit about the maintenance, just a little bit, that this is a great example of at Contra Loma Swim Lagoon. This is, of course, the reservoir, and then that pretty blue oval is the swim lagoon. And this is an example where we're really maintaining it. So we're making repairs as we speak. That work has started to repair that swim lagoon so that hopefully it will be open next summer. Keep our fingers crossed. And we have projects throughout the district as well. So certainly at Del Val, where we're remodeling the visitor center, and Guerin Creek, where we're replacing bridges. So that's kind of a snapshot. Next slide. We're also finding ourselves working more and more on restoration projects. This is an aerial shot of Sibley at McCosker property, the McCosker Creek project, where we're daylighting the creek that was in a culvert. That work has started this summer. And so that's a great, again, as part of our mission, really restoring and taking care of district lands. And so this is a really big project, but we also are finding ourselves working on more modest projects where we're replacing a culvert at Huckleberry, and then the Encinal Dune beach restoration and public access that we talked about on Tuesday. Next slide. And then finally, this is just a photo from this Monday of the Shadow Cliffs Interpretive Pavilion. So this is, you can see looking towards the solar panels in the park. This is a wonderful project where it's really expanding the interpretive opportunities at Shadow Cliffs. And I wanted to just also mention, we talked a lot previously about the grants and the partnerships. And I did want to acknowledge the Regional Park Foundation, because we find ourselves really working close partnership with them. This is clearly a project that has received tremendous amount of funding from the Regional Parks Foundation and donors through that. So I wanted to just give a shout out to that as well. All right, next slide. So since we saw you last year in June, we've completed 8 projects. So I just wanted to remind everybody of them. This photo of the Black Diamond Mines coal exhibit that's open. Although it's not open, it's complete. And so hopefully it'll be open when folks can get in there safely. And next slide. And then this was a project that happened just last July, where one of the bridges along the Lafayette-Moraga Trail had reached the end of its useful life. And so that was replaced last summer. And so we're happy to have that open again. And again, these are just some of the other projects that we worked on last year that have been completed. Next slide. So I wanted to share a little bit, a couple of the projects that the Environmental Programs Department has been working on. To the left is the McLaughlin East Shore State Park that we manage. This is where there was Chris Barton and Carla Myers worked on this. This is, I think it started in 2016. It had the components of the restoring the beach, the dunes, providing public access with restroom, parking, and then this incredible engineering feat of threading a trail along the west side of Golden Gate Field. So that has now opened, and I think my understanding is there will be a recognition of that when it's safe to do so. But if you haven't been out there, it's just quite lovely and spectacular. And then the Bay Point Regional Shoreline, this is substantially complete and not open yet, but this was this project where the trail was brought up to accommodate sea level rise, and then big restoration, bay restoration portion of the project, as well as improving amenities for public access with a restroom and water. So we are working with finishing up that work and anticipate that that will be open soon, and we'll be in communication on that when that is open. This is a slide graphic that we showed last year. This is just kind of to help me, and I think hopefully help other folks understand when we want to come to the board for engagement, either to give updates or to receive authorization. So we went through this slide last year, but I think it's helpful as a refresher, and it's in the packet as well. So I just wanted to have this as sort of an anchor to talk about the next slides of upcoming projects that will be coming to you between August and December. So by phase, we have about 10 in total projects that we're going to be coming to you. And I'm not going to go through each of them now, but I've listed them here. And certainly if you have questions about any of them, we can, perhaps at the end, we can go through them. These are also highlighted in the packet with a blue square. So again, I think it's helpful just to have a sense of what's coming your way and where we're headed. Next slide. And these are the remaining projects that are in the pre-design phase that will also be planning to come to the board either for engagement with an update or an action item. So this is my last slide. I just wanted to summarize the projects that are going to be coming online in this year through 2025. We talk a lot about, we work on maintenance projects and they're in these different phases, but we thought it would be also helpful just to sort of give a summary of new projects that are of new assets that will require taking care of, that are going to be coming online over the next 5 years. And so we sort of bundled them in 2-year increments, but I think, you know, it's just, the district advances a tremendous amount of work and is always, I think, working to help the communities of the East Bay connect with nature through various facilities. And I think this is a great representation of those. So I think with that, I'll turn it to Christina.
Thank you so much, Lisa. If you could just put that last slide back up for just a moment, Brian. If you're all studying that list, this list may not be exclusive, but as Lisa said, it's a pretty good representation of the major projects that we have coming online. And we just wanted to put this together so that, because we do so many projects and some are maintenance and some are restoration, so we really wanted to focus on the public access projects. These are projects that will require maintenance and operations. So staffing will be required for these in the future as well. So as we head into more budget uncertainties in the next few years, we certainly will need to, the board will need to do some prioritization of these projects and the staffing and the operations funding that will be required for them. So I don't know if the general manager had to, wanted to add something to that.
Well, I would just, I think I'm, okay, I just would like, this is the working list, very important for the board to look at. The realities of the COVID-19 economic impacts will impact some of these. The real choices you have as a board is we can complete a project, but some of those projects have deadlines that we don't have a choice on. So we're going to lose a grant if we don't complete those. So that clearly is out of our control. If we have $1 million from another agency, that does not get extended. Maybe there's a short extension or a one-time extension, but eventually we've got to spend that money to complete the project or we don't get the money. So we, as you could see, and I think Sean really pointed out in the trails, that in one project, 70% of the money were grants and other sources of funds, not district funds, not WW. So we're really dependent on those grants through the legislature, through bond measures, through other partnerships to be able to complete these projects. So those are the have-tos. We have to complete those projects. But if you're looking for choices on what can we delay because of the staffing impact, and that's the number one issue, is the staffing impact. We have limited tools, and the more we decide not to fill positions to save money, the less work we can get done and the less we can take care of. So we do have a toolbox. We've used it before to address economic downturns, but there is pain involved. I don't want to pretend. I want to be very transparent that there will be, something's got to delay, something that, the old story, something's got to give. And so this is really important to, as we go through next year, we really need to look at, these will be the types of things that we either have to get done because of grants or there's no way to keep them closed. I think the Bay Trail at Golden Gate Fields is a really great example. Millions of dollars in grants that we had to complete, but it's open, whether we wanted it open or not right away during the pandemic, it's open. So that is a direct burden on staff. And we've committed to our labor group that we were not going to open up new facilities without having a pipeline of new staffing. So this is kind of setting the stage for the next few years. But I really want to thank Lisa for trying to look at the timing of this so we can actually make those decisions. I think the next level you'll see is what are the ones where we don't have a choice. We either have a grant deadline or we're going to lose an opportunity forever if we don't do it. So not to be the Grim Reaper, but we do have the tools. And we've done it before, and so there's still a lot of great projects we can do to complete our promises. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. GM. Board members? Oh, and thank you very much, Lisa, for another fabulous presentation. I love that photo. It's makes me smile. Pre-mask, pre-distancing. We'll be back there soon, I hope.
Director Corbett, I will just mention this is the entire ASD division, and we're standing in the order of our org chart, actually.
Oh.
We made lines. We should have had a drone so we could get an aerial, but this is the entire division out of Concord.
Very cool. Very nice. All right. Board members, any questions or comments? Oh, yes, Director Coffey. Hi.
So this is really basic because I'm still trying to figure out when a construction project that is undertaken by the district comes under the purview of, as you call it, Christina, DECO, the design and construction folks. I'm sort of understanding why some of it comes within the purview of the environmental staff in terms of how that org chart works, but some of it is massed. Some of it is trail construction, restrooms, new wings, corporate yards. I'm not sure what it is that falls within DECO, and I'm still not, and it's just my failing to get my arms around it. I don't see the Yorata Ranch barn project here. Where does that fall, and why would it not fall under restoration and DECO as opposed to maybe operations or somebody else, or maybe I'm just missing that? So there's an example of what triggers my curiosity about this.
Thank you, Director Coffey, and thank you for being curious about that. And I will say the lines of delineation are not perfectly clear, but particularly for the errater barn, that is a massed project, a maintenance and skilled trades project. And it generally falls in the lines, wonderful, Jim O'Connor is here to help answer that question. But generally projects that are more complex, more complicated, larger dollar amounts, require outside consultants, tend to go to DECO, to design and construction, Lisa's shop. And projects that we can do more in-house that tend to be smaller, more routine projects are done by Jim's shop in maintenance and skilled trades. So Jim, do you have anything to add to that?
The Rada Barn project, I believe that's a jock project. And so therefore, a lot of the complex contract work, the formal contracting work is done through the jock process. So that's a project example where since that portion of the work, the detail work is done, then we take it over as a mass project working with the jock contractors. So, and there really is, I mean, Christina's right there. The line is not a perfect line, Director Coffey. It depends on the complexity. We sit down with ASD all the time and look at project loads, and we decide, especially ones that are right on the border. So Kelly Barrington, the chief of mass, and his staff, like Nate Luna, will sit down with ASD staff and we'll talk about projects as we're looking forward, especially on the major maintenance side, the infrastructure projects, and we'll really talk them through. And then sometimes there's projects where mass may start into a project, and then as a lot of infrastructure projects, you discover complexity. You may find some issue along the way as you're diving into the project, and then it becomes a project where the engineering level is so high that it's really better pass it off to ASD staff and handle it over there. So there's not a lot of clean lines, but we work very closely to the two divisions together to make those decisions on an annual basis.
And then if I may add to that, all that for you, Director Coffey, is that capital projects in different stages, they also may fall not only in design and construction under ASD, in MAST under operations, but there's some capital programs and projects that also fall under the finance division. So all of that, and I see ATM Mocker coming online, but all of that is defined by the scope and the size of the project. And we all work collaboratively, and it all gets brought forward with a holistic perspective as the project continues to move forward. And Deborah, would you like to add anything else?
A lot of the grant projects end up working out of management services. So certainly some of the FEMA projects we're managing, and we help with some of the paving from time to time, and we all collaborate. So Jeff Rasmussen, Kelly Barrington, and Lisa Gorgian are always talking about where's the best place for the project to land. And we've come up with a pretty good system of checking on each other on how we want to distribute the projects throughout the district.
Okay, this is great because now I'm understanding that all of senior management has a piece of capital projects, and I shouldn't be confused by that. There's operational reasons for that, and I shouldn't feel bad that I don't necessarily know the operational details behind which of these divisions and management sectors get assigned these projects, and I can just live happily with that anyway. So that it's becoming clearer to me. Thank you very much.
And Director Coffey, it's also an issue of capacity, obviously. So if DECO has taken on a bunch of very large capital projects and somebody else has finished their projects, they may say, I have a little bit more capacity, and I don't think you do, because people are very willing to say that. And so it's a capacity issue as well. But it's also the talent. Who has that expertise in what shop? But but we're kind of talking exceptions to the rule. Most mass things are major maintenance. Most DECO things are major capital projects. And then the finance ones are ones that something like Jeff Rasmussen's been dealing with for decades and has the expertise and capacity to help with those. So we're kind of a little bit focused on the exceptions to the rule, but the general rules are major capital development. Capital development is DECO. Major maintenance is like a roof, a window, a paint job is going to be massed. But there's always exceptions. But in general, there is there is a regular business being done by those departments as capital projects, major maintenance, and finance has a group because finance started with the whole grant program for CC. So they give the report on all the Measure CC projects, now FF. So we didn't want to change in the middle of the stream.
Thank you. That all makes sense and is very helpful.
I have something else to add to that, but I see Director Lane, did you have a question on the same topic? Different topics, so go ahead. I think I read your lips there. You also, I think, Director Coffey had a question about within ASD, which projects go to, for example, Chris's group, the restoration and public access process and projects, and then Sean's group has, he has major capital projects as well with trails. And so, as you know, the merger of ASD, I think it's been 6 years now or so since that happened. And so there's sort of an ongoing process to refine those lines. And we are proposing to actually integrate the trails group into planning and then integrate Chris and Carla, the environmental programs unit, into DECO. And so, Chris, and I think Brian has a couple of slides that will show that if you're interested to see quickly what that looks like. But those units, we always say, are very small but mighty. So the Trails Department only has 3 folks, and then the Environmental Programs Unit just has the 2 folks, and that has been challenging because they're kind of off on their own. And so we all work together closely, and by reorganizing this, it will just better align the way that the work is already being done. So if you can see here, the Trails Development is shown in that kind of orange color with the 3 folks, and then environmental programs, just the 2 positions. And Brian, do you have the next slide? Right, so now you can see in the environmental programs unit on the right there, that would be under the Chief of Design and Construction, Lisa Gorgian, and would become, right now, Design and Construction has 3 managers, so Chris would become the 4th manager within that department. And then on the left in this red circle, this is the Trails unit, would become part of planning, because Trails and planning work very hand in hand. Although Trails does build large complex projects, so much of their work is working with other agencies, working with developers, and doing those interagency negotiations and far in advance planning work. So so the proposal is to move Trails into there. So we have talked with the union about this. We've talked with all of the employees involved. We've talked with the general manager. Everyone's on board that this will be a more efficient way to streamline and be sure that we're delivering projects consistently and efficiently.
So if I can, the chart you just showed us is the new org chart reflecting that reorganization. The one we have on page 4 in our packet is the existing one as of now.
That is correct.
Okay, I got that. All right, that's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Director Waspi?
Thank you. So Christina and Lisa, that's a great name, DECO. I don't know where I've been, but that's the first time I've heard it. If you're making hats and t-shirts, let me know. I'd love one. And also, I take solace in both of your words when you said that the list of projects going out to 24, 25, where I think, Christina, you said they were highlights, and Lisa said that they were, the title of the slide was public access projects. So I'll take solace in knowing that the Peralta Oaks North project was nowhere near there, and I couldn't go any further to the right, but I hope it's not into 2030 or something like that. Only a comment.
Absolutely, Dennis. Director Coffey, thank you for, or Rossby, thank you for that comment. We did have it on the list, and we thought, well, we really want to focus on public access projects that provide new access for the public to enjoy our parklands. So it didn't fall into that category, but it is absolutely on the list. Hopefully in the next 3-ish years, 2 to 4 years, let's say. Thanks.
Great.
Director Lane.
Yeah, I have a a slightly odd comment on all of this, and I really love this workshop. You know, it's fascinating, and I am so pleased with the level of collaboration that's going on among divisions and departments. And so that's very significant to me. And I think the fact that people listen to one another is something that's characteristic of what we try to do in the Park District. So I want to ask how the conversations go about at what point you ring up a board member. So we have talked about land use plans, which are relatively simple because they're usually in one ward, and you get to a certain point, and people are doing really well about calling the director at a point in that and finding out want to know more, etc. But there are things on which that come up more actively that I think each of us would like to be contacted about. And of course, right now, I'm looking at all this correspondence we got on Port Malati. And so, I mean, I didn't call Elizabeth up or anything, but I said to myself, okay, so I hope people are calling Director Eccles and talking out, you know, what our involvement is and what is going on in Richmond, which is very complicated. And that's a very, you know, that's one that comes to mind right off the bat. But there are of course other ones. Like he is involved with Oakland and the sewer problem above Temescal, and I think he's talking to staff and being involved in a level that's really perfect. But there are things that are going on that the staff does that we don't hear about, and I'm wondering how you figure out what's the appropriate time to give us a ring and listen to our side and find out what you are doing. So that's a long one, but I'd like us to be involved at whatever level the particular director wants.
And as a general manager, I'll just say, of course. And if there is an issue that where you feel you have been left out of the loop, I usually hear about it pretty quick. And I know Director Eccles would comment that she's had several conversations with staff over Point Malati. But I do have to say, sometimes you're going to know as soon as we know. Sometimes there's things happening out there that we don't know, even with advanced planning, even with that. And it's very important that it's a two-way conversation to hear. But it's always been a priority, continues to be a priority. And as a general manager, I want to hear if there isn't information. And I know there's always times when we're behind. I know that the things like, you know, a tragedy in a park, you know, a police incident, a fire, those are all things that the board's a coyote attack, are all things that board members really want to know as soon as possible.
Sometimes it's more an art than a science, but when it comes to things like capital projects,
yes,
perhaps you could slot in something that says, be sure and talk to the director, you know, along with your other list of things. That's
absolutely.
all.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Director Lane. And we do certainly, at a minimum, always contact the director before anything's going to go before the board, any kind of action. And that's something that since I came on board, we've been that's part of our regular routine, is to contact board members before whose ward it's in, before an action would go to the board. We do our best to identify the appropriate, as you say, it's more an art than a science. What's happening with the project? How much detail do you want to know? I would say that you know, from our staff, we do our best to fill that out, but we just so welcome comments from the board. So if there's a project you want to know what's happening with us, we always are glad to schedule a time to give you an update. So don't be shy about reaching out if you want updates on the projects.
And I really want to encourage the board to contact the staff as well. You know, the COVID challenge has been a real challenge and still is on communications. I think we all get Zoom fatigue, of course, but if you've heard something and you want to check it out, any of the senior management are more than happy to talk to you about it, or I am, or anyone, whether it's Temescal or it's Concord or Richmond. We do have a lot of politics in the land use side, as you know very well. And we've been lucky lately that there hasn't been a lot of controversial developments moving forward, but they will start to move forward. That will be used as an economic stimulus as well. So it's sometimes, frequently, you've got a very good conduit to people with information. And so that's, believe me, it's not going to bore us or bother us to hear what you've heard, because we can check it out. I'll be really clear. I had a conversation with Director Eccles that I wasn't sure. I knew there was going to be an initiative or referendum on Point Melody, and I wasn't sure on the status of that. And Director Eccles was able to update me, and then I double checked with other people as well. And so it's very helpful to us. We don't always know.
Yeah, because I always try and do that if I possibly can. And for example, hearing about this huge demonstration in Martinez that's ending up at the waterfront. You know, so when I heard about that, I just sent off an email to say, anybody talking to us about our waterfront at Martinez? Yeah. And so I feel like that's something that I can pass on to.
Yeah, and of course, Tony was talking to the police chief, and we already had, this is the second or third demonstration. It's the county seat, obviously, with the county jail. So we're being very careful about those things.
Good. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments before we go to closing remarks and then public comments? May I just ask, do we have, I know we're going to have closing remarks in a moment from our general manager, Bob Doyle, and our AGM, Christina Kelchner, but I wanted to ask, is there anybody else who would like to make public comments besides the one letter that we received already? Do we know?
Hi there, this is Simone from the Ridge Trail. We have a quick comment as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else with us that has any comments during public comments? All right. Thank you very much. Good to know. We will be with you in just a moment. All right. Take it away. Who's first? AGM or GM?
I'll just speak very briefly.
Okay.
I just really wanted to thank the board for the time, and as professionals in this business, we feel very lucky, very fortunate to have a board that is so engaged in our projects, that knows our parks so well, and is so supportive of staff and the work that we do. So I just really appreciate the time, and once again, want to just encourage you all to reach out anytime. If you want updates, if you want to talk over a project, if you've heard something, we are always pleased to talk with our board members. And I just feel very fortunate to be here, to be doing this very important work for our parklands and our communities, and to have such a great team to work with. So thank you very much for the time today.
Thank you so very much. Thank you for your kind comments. Mr. GM, can you top that?
Well, no, never. But I do also want to talk about the balance of experience on the board. It really is a great perspective for the staff, the experience at all different levels. That's always something we've been blessed with at the Park District. And as I started out, you know, keeping our promises, especially now in a COVID world, I just do want to acknowledge the sense of exhaustion that all of the staff is feeling by not just being able to talk to you and not be able to talk to in person and not be able to talk or get out to, meet people in the field. That's always been, no matter you want to call it a big agency or a big family, it's always been a part of the Park District to be able to have a casual conversation. And we're trying to drive these workshops to get work done, to do our business for the people. We're spending a lot of taxpayers' monies on these projects. They deserve to know what we're doing. But when you look at the scale of the projects that you went over today, and you add the scale of the land acquisition and you add the scale of the finance, this is really a pretty remarkable place. We want to keep that public support by being transparent and letting them know what we're listening, but also that we're trying to keep these parks open and still build stuff. So it's just amazing to me. I want to thank Christina and all her staff. This has been a tough time, but we seem to be, I think it was Winston Churchill, keep on keeping on. Or maybe that was Grateful Dead. I can't remember anymore. But that's what we're doing. There's always delays. There's always challenges. I guess what I didn't hear today, and maybe everybody was being really kind, but COVID is impacting all of our partners, both nonprofit, as well as the agencies we have to get permits from, the planning departments in the counties. And so that's an additional issue specifically for trails and capital projects, where you get one meeting, you get one Zoom meeting and that's it. And if there's a disagreement, it could be another month before you get back on to resolve that. And the board needs to know that. It's a part of the COVID challenge, is you have very limited access to people who are not in their offices, who are trying to figure out how to do their business. And a lot of people are just off. They're not working. We are blessed to have a staff who is working, who isn't doing other jobs assigned by the county administrator, that they're focused on what we do. And it's a piece of really good news for the public that we really need to share. We're here, we're doing our job, we're getting work done, and the parks are open, but it's not easy. And I don't want to discount some of the fear and some of the challenges that staffs feel, including all the way up and down the ladder. But we're doing our best, but some things are just subject to a new reality. And I appreciate your patience. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. General Manager. Very well said. But the proof's in the pudding. Everybody is hanging in and we're accomplishing great things for sure. So our next item is public comment, and I'm not sure about the protocol. AGM Kelchner, do we have someone who will let people in if there's people outside Zoom and on YouTube to speak? I know we have some people who are in the Zoom room because of our technical glitch earlier in the meeting. Oh, there you are. Hello.
Yeah. Sabrina Purnell, the Executive Secretary for ASD, will be handling.
Thank you, Sabrina. I'll just let you take over.
Hi, Ellen. Hi, sorry, Madam President.
No,
everyone. We received one comment via email yesterday on July 9th, and we received two requests for public comment during the live meeting today during Zoom. The first comment is from Austin McNerney, Advocacy Director at Bicycle Trails Council of East Bay. And would you like me to read his statement, Madam President?
Up to 3 minutes of it, yes.
Okay. Dear Board of Directors and staff, on behalf of the Bicycle Trails Council of the East Bay, BTCEB, and our growing membership, we want to express our sincere appreciation for the efforts of Park District staff during the current pandemic to maintain public access, as getting outside has never been needed more. We also appreciate the opportunity to review and comment on the detailed staff report on capital projects and stewardship activities during Discuss This Day. To assist in ensuring that the Park District consider the perspectives of responsible cyclists, we provide the following observations from our review of the materials presented to you today. We concur with the General Manager's introductory statement. The Park District's, in quotes, the Park District's mission of protecting our natural lands and connecting all people to nature is critical for the health and well-being of the communities we serve, now more than ever, end quote. To this end, we respectfully ask that the Park District consider taking emergency actions to expand access to bicyclists on a small number of existing key trails to help disperse users and reduce tension from the overcrowding we are experiencing as a result of the pandemic. This access could be granted temporarily and would be prudent, especially on weekends when the parks are incredibly crowded. Number 2, we ask that the Planning and GIS Department's 2020 Work Plan, project number 13, initiate a Trails User Advisory Group to evaluate public access strategies to expand the Park District Natural Surface Trail Network. Be expedited as a group is critically needed. This group has discussed for a very long time, and we ask that it be prioritized and staffed appropriately in order to provide a forum for collaboration amongst parties committed to developing recommendations that serve the growing need for additional multi-use access to the public lands. Number 3, closing the gaps, updates on regional trail projects. We would appreciate if staff could add detail regarding which users will be allowed access to the various projects detailed in the report. It is unclear from the projects listed whether or not cyclists will be allowed on any of the projects listed. In particular, projects number 19 through 22 should include detail on the types of trails being considered and how off-road cycling opportunities will be addressed. Would be helpful if the table indicating trails and design and permitting listed the uses allowed. We find the fact that the total mileage of all trails in design and construction is only approximately 17.55 for an estimated cost of no less than $42 million to be staggering. For this amount of money, we hope that additional bicycle access will be provided. We would appreciate understanding how, number 4, we would appreciate understanding how projects are identified for addition to future work plans, as we have many recommendations for sites and trails that could be improved. Item number 28, realign Soaring Hawk Trail, and that is the end of 3 minutes. The rest of the comment has been sent to all of the board members.
Thank you very much.
And we have 2 people on the line, 2 members of the public. One is Simone Neguion de Lestang from the Bay Area Ridge Trail Council, and Kelly waiting to speak.
Thank you very much. So, hello, Simone. You have 3 minutes. Thanks for joining us.
Hi there. Thank you so much. Yes, so I am representing the Bay Area Ridge Trail Council here today, and just wanted to give a sincere thank you for the staff and the board for your time, and also for your continued support of the Ridge Trail and our mission to create a 550-mile contiguous loop around all 9 Bay Area counties. We were particularly excited to hear the update about the extension for the permitting process on the Garin to Niles Canyon project. This is one that's near and dear to our hearts, and this was specifically number 5 mentioned in Sean's work plan. Thank you so much, Sean. And Sean did mention he did have a great, do a great job stating the importance of this project to the Ridge Trail as well as to the surrounding community. As a small organization, we were really excited to be able to support the Parks District by securing some of the external funding that can go towards this project. So that was $200,000 in a Coastal Conservancy grant. And we do hope to celebrate with some form of virtual groundbreaking as you guys do start the work on the upland portion of the trail. Additionally, we really did appreciate the mention of the Ferndale to Perea Road section of the Ridge Trail in the work plan. This was number 16 in the board packet. We just wanted to know how important we believe this trail is, especially with the recent acquisition and protection of Almond Ranch, a project that the Parks District put $1 million of funding towards. And when this 1.6 mile section of trails, it will be complete, then trail users will be able to have use a connected trail that connects them from the historic downtowns of Benicia over the bridge to Martinez and up and through the ridgelines. It's a very exciting project and part of the Carquinez Strait Scenic Loop Trail. The vision plan for this is imminently going to be released, and we'll be excited to coordinate with you guys on this. And furthermore, if we do have several multi-use gaps that remain in East Bay Regional Park District lands, and we would be happy to serve on part of a trail users working group, as Austin had mentioned in a previous public comment, and to work with you to try to promote multi-use access to the trails that align with the Ridge Trail, specifically about 7 miles of gaps there. So thank you so much for your time and for all your hard work. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us, Simone. We appreciate those kind comments. Thank you. And I think we have one more speaker. I'm not sure if we will see them on Zoom or not.
Kelly.
Is Kelly in the room with us? Kelly, are you with us?
Yeah, fine. I was on the phone.
Hi, Kelly. Kelly, please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name's Kelly Abdur. I'm with Mission Peak Conservancy. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, all right. Well, first of all, as long as I don't know if I'm on the phone or on the computer, but anyway, as long as we're talking about the Bay Area Ridge Trail, I'd like to point out that there is no legal way to walk from the Guerin section and from the Vallejo Mill. There is no legal way to walk directly towards the Sunol and the Sunol Ridge Trail. It takes you on a very long detour. So it'd be nice to have a connection from that Bay Area Ridge Trail down towards, I think it's called the Cook Trail. It's very near the Holy Cross Monastery on Palomares Road, and it goes to the east. And there's also the Niles Canyon Trail, which is very much needed, that would connect between Fremont and Union City and the Sunol. Also, I'd like to also mention the expectations of transparency and trust that the public has, and those expectations, that trust has been broken. The polarization at Mission Peak, it's not just about the lawsuit. It's also about that 6 weeks of closure that we haven't forgotten about. And those 6 weeks of park closure, that wasn't a parking lot closure, that was a park closure. That violated the trust. And people now expect more. And when the lease expires, which it did expire 3 days ago, 3 days ago, the lease expired, we expect to have that very well figured out, ironed out legally in writing. And there's a requirement in the lease that says the lease shall be mutual written consent to any changes to the lease, any extension, anything requires mutual written consent. And I know there should be some lawyers on this board, there should be some lawyers on staff that would understand what that means and be able to read that contract and make heads or tails out of it. Right now, we're flying blind. We're operating off the books. We're operating under the counter. We're operating by the seat of the pants, and there is no lease in place. There's a talk about an automatic month-to-month extension, but that talk is not backed up on paper, in reality, with a legal contract. And of course, there is no trust here. The legal contract now is the linchpin of trust. Those relationships, those partnerships, they need to be managed, and they need to be managed on paper with legal contracts. And I really, the black hole of management, of planning, of contractual basis for this relationship at Mission Peak needs to be fixed. And I urge you to call all the lawyers you know and get them to work on that contract at Mission Peak, which expired 3 days ago and has nothing in place to replace it. We need trust. We need transparency. We need a contractual legal basis with mutual written consent on paper. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kelly. All right. Are there any other public comments? All right. Hearing none. Board members, do you have any closing comments? Anyone else on staff have anything they'd like to say before we adjourn? Wonderful meeting. Thank you, everybody, for all of your participation. Mr. GM.
Just a quick response, just to be clear, the lease has gone to at Mission Peak as a month-to-month lease. It's in the contract. It's part of the contract. It's a legally binding month-to-month lease. We have much of the same language all over the district with 100 or more leases we have and agreements. If there's an extension clause in all those agreements, it's month to month. I remind everybody again, we are in a pandemic and we have a few things going on. And we've had some challenges with the city on wanting to close that park. But the current agreement is valid, and we will get back to those negotiations as soon as we can. And I anticipate that's a priority for the staff and the board. But we've been a little bit pressed for many reasons, but it's a valid binding agreement for the continuation. We're not changing anything right now. We're operating the park just as we always have. So that's where it is.
Thank you for that response. Director Coffey.
I just want to reiterate what we've been saying throughout this meeting is that the enormous amount of time, energy, and thought that goes into these presentations is very much appreciated and very much informs us of what we do and how we do our jobs. So thank you very much.
Yes, AGM Kelchner.
Yes, thank you for that acknowledgement, Director Coffey. And I do want to appreciate my team, all of the chiefs who have worked very hard, and the managers, and all of the staff in ASD, particularly Sabrina Pinnell, who helped to put this together. Sabrina, if we could see your face again. Just wanted to thank you for all the behind the scenes work of putting out the written materials, getting them delivered to everyone, and our administrative analysts, Erdem and Anita, for putting together the PowerPoints and all of the data that needs to be collected for this. So many people, many hands to put this together. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. I know it's a whole new type of production and a lot of extra work, which everybody does with great grace and dexterity. And for the most part, we all look really good. Everybody's doing good. All right. Any other additional comments? We all agree with we all thank and agree with all those great comments of our staff and their hard work. With that, I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm zoomed out. All right, everyone. Great to see you. Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you so very much. You make us proud. All right. See you later. Take care. Bye.